Hey there, folks. Welcome to this deep dive into one of the most epic superhero films to ever hit the big screen, Aquaman from 2018. I'm your host, and today, I'm here to tell you exactly why this movie deserves a spot on your must-watch list. If you're a fan of breathtaking visuals, heart-pounding action, and a story that pulls you into a whole new world under the waves, then buckle up because Aquaman is going to blow you away. Directed by the masterful James Wan, this film isn't just another superhero flick. It's a visual spectacle that redefines what a blockbuster can be. And trust me, once you see it, you'll be hooked. Pun totally intended. Let me walk you through everything that makes this movie so special, from its origins to its stunning production, and why it's the perfect escape for anyone craving adventure. First off, let's talk about what Aquaman brings to the table in the superhero genre. Released on December 21, 2018 in the United States, this film is part of the DC Extended Universe, building on characters we've seen in previous movies like Justice League. But here's the thing, you don't need to have watched every DC film to jump right in. Aquaman stands tall on its own, introducing us to Arthur Curry, a half-human, half-Atlantean hero who's got the strength of the ocean and the grit of the land. Played by the charismatic Jason Momoa, Arthur is this rugged, tattooed powerhouse who can command sea creatures and wield a trident like nobody's business. Jason Momoa, known for his roles in Game of Thrones as Khal Drogo and in films like Conan the Barbarian, brings this larger-than-life energy to the character. He's not your typical clean-cut superhero. He's got that wild, rebellious vibe that makes him relatable and fun to root for. And let me tell you, if you've ever felt like you don't quite fit in anywhere, Arthur's journey will resonate with you on a personal level, without giving away any twists, of course. Now, why should you watch it? Because Aquaman takes you on an underwater odyssey that's unlike anything else out there. Imagine plunging into vibrant, glowing kingdoms beneath the sea, filled with ancient ruins, massive sea creatures, and technology that blends magic with sci-fi. The film's world-building is top-notch, creating this immersive Atlantis that's been hidden from the surface world for centuries. It's got that sense of wonder, like discovering a lost civilization, and it makes you feel like you're exploring right alongside the characters. If you're into fantasy epics like Lord of the Rings or sci-fi adventures like Star Wars, this movie scratches that itch, but with a fresh, oceanic twist. Plus, in a time when superhero movies can feel formulaic, Aquaman stands out by embracing its over-the-top fun. It's got humor, romance, and stakes that feel global, all wrapped in a package that's visually stunning. Speaking of the visuals, oh man, where do I even start? The cinematography by Don Burgess captures the underwater realms in ways that make your jaw drop. Using cutting-edge visual effects from companies like Industrial Light and Magic and Weta Digital, the film creates these seamless blends of practical sets and CGI that make the ocean feel alive and dangerous. The budget for Aquaman was around $160 million to $200 million, and every penny shows on screen. They filmed in locations across the globe to bring authenticity to the story. Principal photography kicked off in May 2017 in Australia, specifically at Village Roadshow Studios on the Gold Coast in Queensland. They built massive water tanks there, including one that's over 100 feet long and holds millions of gallons of water for those intense underwater sequences. Then they headed to Newfoundland and Canada for some rugged coastal shots, Morocco for desert scenes that add this exotic flair, and even Sicily and Italy for picturesque Mediterranean vibes. This international filming really gives the movie a worldly feel, making it seem like the adventure spans the entire planet. And let's not forget the director, James Wan. This guy is a horror maestro turned action wizard. Think of films like Saw, The Conjuring, and Furious 7. He was brought on board after impressing with his work on Furious 7, and he infused Aquaman with that same high-octane energy. Wan wanted to make this film his own, steering away from the darker tones of earlier DC movies and going for something brighter, more colorful, and full of life. He collaborated closely with the writers, Jeff Johns, who co-wrote the story, and the screenplay team of David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick and Will Beall. The story draws inspiration from Aquaman comics, particularly the New 52 run by Jeff Johns, which modernized the character and made him this badass king of the seas. Wan even incorporated elements from classic Aquaman lore, like the 7 underwater kingdoms, to build this rich mythology without overwhelming newcomers. The cast is another huge reason to dive in. Pun intended again. Jason Momoa leads as Arthur Curry, but he's surrounded by an all-star lineup. Amber Heard plays Mera, the fierce warrior princess from Atlantis who's got hydrokinetic powers, meaning she can control water in incredible ways. Heard, who's appeared in films like The Danish Girl and Justice League, brings this elegant strength to the role, making Mera a standout female character who's equal parts brains and brawn. Then there's Patrick Wilson as Orm, Arthur's half-brother and the Ocean Master. Wilson, a frequent collaborator with Juan from the Conjuring series, delivers this intense, regal performance that adds layers to the family dynamics. Willem Dafoe is Vulko, the wise mentor figure from Atlantis. Dafoe, iconic from Spider-Man and Platoon, brings gravitas and a touch of mystery. Nicole Kidman stars as Atlana, Arthur's mother and the Queen of Atlantis. Kidman, an Oscar winner for films like The Hours, was drawn to the role because it allowed her to play a warrior queen, and she trained extensively in martial arts for her scenes. Dolph Lundgren, the action legend from Rocky IV and The Expendables, plays King Nereus of Zabel, another underwater kingdom, adding that tough guy presence. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is David Kane, also known as Black Manta, a high-tech pirate with a vendetta. Abdul-Mateen, who later starred in Watchmen and The Matrix Resurrections, brings this charismatic menace to the character. Other notable cast members include Ludi Lin as Merc, the Atlantean commander, Temuera Morrison as Tom Curry, Arthur's human father who's a lighthouse keeper, and Randall Park in a cameo as Dr. Stephen Shin, a marine biologist obsessed with Atlantis. The voice talent is impressive too. Julie Andrews voices the Carathan, this mythical sea creature, bringing her legendary warmth and authority. Jimon Hounsou voices King Rico of the Fisherman Kingdom, and John Rhys-Davies voices the Brine King. Even the younger versions of characters are thoughtfully cast. Otis Danji as young Arthur at 13, Khan Guldur at 9, and so on, ensuring the flashbacks feel seamless. Production-wise, Aquaman was a massive undertaking. Development started back in 2004, but it really gained momentum after Man of Steel in 2013 kicked off the DC Extended Universe. Warner Bros. Announced Aquaman in 2014, with Jason Momoa cast shortly after. James Wan signed on in 2015, turning down The Flash to focus on this. Pre-production involved extensive concept art to design the Atlantean world. Think bioluminescent creatures, high-tech armor inspired by sea life, and architecture that mixes ancient Roman influences with futuristic elements. The costume design by Kim Barrett is phenomenal. Aquaman's classic orange and green suit is updated with intricate scales that look like they're made from Atlantean metal, and it took months to perfect the look, so it moved realistically underwater. Filming wrapped in October 2017 after 114 days of principal photography, but post-production was where the magic happened. The visual effects team created over 2,300 shots, using motion capture for underwater movements. Actors performed in dry-for-wet setups, harnessed on wires to simulate swimming, with blue screens everywhere. The sound design by Eric A. Dahl and Ethan van der Ryn captures the whooshes of water, the roars of sea beasts, and the echoes of underwater battles perfectly. And the score, composed by Rupert Gregson-Williams, who also did Wonder Woman, blends orchestral swells with electronic elements to evoke the mystery of the deep sea. There's even a standout track featuring Pitbull, Skylar Grey, and Wiz Khalifa called Ocean to Ocean, which samples Toto's Africa for a fun, thematic tie-in. Why watch it? Because Aquaman smashed box office records, grossing over $1.15 billion worldwide, making it the highest-grossing DC film at the time and the 20th highest-grossing movie ever. It opened to $67.8 million in its first weekend in the US and dominated internationally, especially in China, where it earned $291.6 million. Critics praised its ambitious scope. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 65% approval rating from critics, but in 72% from audiences, showing it's a crowd pleaser. Publications like Variety called it outrageously entertaining, and The Hollywood Reporter highlighted Wan's direction for turning a potentially campy character into a heroic icon. But beyond the numbers, this movie is about themes that hit home: identity, family, environmentalism, and bridging divided worlds. Arthur's story encourages us to embrace our heritage, no matter how complicated, and it subtly nods to ocean conservation without preaching. The humor, often from Arthur's fish-out-of-water moments, see what I did there, keeps things light. with witty banter that feels natural. Let's geek out on more details. The film's runtime is 143 minutes, rated PG-13 for sci-fi violence and action, plus some language. It was released in various formats: 2D, 3D, IMAX, Dolby Cinema, even Screen X for that wraparound experience. Marketing was huge. Warner Brothers spent about $150 million on promotion, including trailers during Comic-Con, partnerships with brands like Subway and AT&T, and a global tour with the cast. The first trailer dropped at San Diego Comic-Con in July 2018, generating massive buzz with its reveal of Atlantis. In terms of influences, Aquaman draws from classic adventure films like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Romancing the Stone, with Wan citing them as inspirations for the globe-trotting elements. There's also a horror vibe in some sequences, thanks to Wan's background. Think tense, shadowy underwater chases that build suspense like in his Conjuring films. The props and sets are worth mentioning too. The Trident, a key artifact, was designed with intricate engravings symbolizing Atlantean history. Armor for the Atlanteans incorporates real marine motifs, like shark fins and coral patterns, crafted from lightweight materials for actor mobility. Stunt coordinator Kyle Gardner oversaw the wire work and fight choreography, blending martial arts with superhuman feats. Jason Momoa did many of his own stunts, training in Hawaiian ocean waters to get that authentic feel. For the tech-savvy, the film's use of de-aging effects on actors like Nicole Kidman and Temuera Morrison for flashbacks is seamless, courtesy of ILM, and the creature designs, from seahorse-like mounts to massive sharks ridden like horses, are inspired by real marine biology, making the fantasy grounded. Reception-wise, while some critics noted the plot's familiarity, the consensus was that the visuals and performances elevated. Empire magazine gave it 4 stars, praising its sheer, gaseous entertainment. Fans loved the representation too. Jason Momoa, of Hawaiian and Native American descent, brings diversity to the superhero role, inspiring kids from similar backgrounds. If you're into behind-the-scenes trivia, here's some fun stuff. James Wan insisted on practical effects where possible, like building a full-scale submarine interior. Amber Heard wore a wig for Mara's red hair, and her costume included over 500 hand-applied scales. Dolph Lundgren joked about finally playing a king after years of villains. And get this, the film features over 100 different species of sea creatures, all digitally created with attention to anatomical accuracy. Aquaman also sparked merchandise galore. Action figures from Mattel, Funko Pops, apparel from Hot Topic, even a tie-in novel by Tim Seeley expanding the lore. It won awards too, like the Visual Effects Society Award for Outstanding Created Environment, and was nominated for Teen Choice Awards. But ultimately, why should you watch Aquaman? Because it's pure escapism at its finest. In a world full of stress, this movie transports you to a place of wonder, where heroes rise from the depths and battles are fought with the fury of the tides. It's empowering, exciting, and leaves you with that satisfied glow of having witnessed something grand. Whether you're watching alone, with friends, or family, it's got something for everyone. Action for thrill seekers, romance for the heartfelt, and visuals that demand the biggest screen possible. If you haven't seen it yet, grab some popcorn, dim the lights, and let Aquaman sweep you away. Trust me, once the credits roll, with that epic post-credit scene teasing future adventures, you'll be glad you did. And if you're already a fan, rewatching it reveals new details every time, from the intricate world lore to the subtle character arcs. Now, let's circle back to the production timeline for a bit more depth. The idea for an Aquaman film floated around since the early 2000s, but it was Geoff Johns' comic revamp in 2011 that made it viable. Warner Brothers fast-tracked it after Batman vs. Superman's success, announcing Momoa in 2014. Wan joined in June 2015, and scripting evolved from an initial draft by Kurt Johnstad to the final version. Casting was meticulous. Heard was cast in January 2016, Wilson in March, and so on, with chemistry reads ensuring the ensemble clicked. Filming challenges included simulating underwater hair and clothing movement. Actors wore special rigs, and VFX added the flowing effects later. The Gold Coast location provided tax incentives, saving millions, and the crew employed over 700 locals, boosting the economy. Musically, Gregson Williams' score uses leitmotifs for characters, a heroic fanfare for Arthur, ethereal choirs for Atlantis. He recorded with a 100-piece orchestra in London, incorporating unusual instruments like waterphones for that aquatic sound. Thematically, the film explores unity in diversity. The Seven Kingdoms represent different cultures under the sea, mirroring real-world issues without heavy-handedness. It's also family-focused, showing how past choices shape the present. Critically, while Metacritic scores it 55 out of 100, user reviews on IMDb average 6.8 out of 10 from over 500,000 votes, with praise for its spectacle. It influenced later DC films, proving lighter tones work. In home media, the Blu-ray includes extras like behind-the-scenes featurettes, deleted scenes, and a sneak peek at Shazam. It sold millions, extending its reach. If you're still here with me, that means you're ready to dive even deeper into why Aquaman from 2018 is one of those rare superhero movies that truly feels like an epic adventure straight out of your wildest dreams. We've already covered the basics: the incredible cast led by Jason Momoa, the visionary direction by James Wan, the massive $160 to $200 million budget that poured into creating those jaw-dropping underwater worlds. But there's so much more to unpack. Stick around because I'm about to take you through the behind-the-scenes magic, the creative choices that made this film stand out, the trivia that makes rewatches even more fun, and all the little details that turn this from just a movie into a full-blown cinematic experience. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll be itching to hit play and submerge yourself in Atlantis all over again. Let's start with the heart of the film, James Wan's unique directing style. Coming from a background in horror with classics like Saw, The Conjuring, and Insidious, Wan brought this incredible sense of tension and atmosphere to Aquaman's action sequences. He talked in interviews about how he approached the underwater chases and battles almost like horror set pieces, building suspense, using shadows in the deep sea, and creating that feeling of something massive lurking just out of sight. But he flipped it on its head by infusing the movie with bright, vibrant colors and pure, unapologetic fun. Wan wanted to escape the darker, brooding tone of earlier DC films and make something that felt like the big adventure movies of the 80s. Think Indiana Jones mixed with Star Wars and a dash of Romancing the Stone. He even said he drew from those globe-trotting, wonder-filled epics to give Aquaman that sense of exploration and magic. And it worked. The film doesn't take itself too seriously, which lets Jason Momoa's natural charisma shine through in those goofy, relatable moments where Arthur's just a regular guy thrust into this insane royal destiny. One of the coolest things Wan did was embrace the character's Polynesian heritage through Jason Momoa. Momoa's tattoos inspired parts of Aquaman's costume design. The intricate patterns on his suit pay homage to Polynesian art, making the character feel personal and grounded even in this fantastical world. Wan pushed Momoa out of his comfort zone to bring out more humor and vulnerability, turning what could have been a one-note tough guy into someone you genuinely root for. In interviews, Wan mentioned how casting Momoa instantly killed any lingering jokes about Aquaman being lame, because who wouldn't believe this powerhouse could command the seas? Now let's talk production details that really show the scale. Filming kicked off in early 2017 and wrapped in October after about 114 intense days. The bulk happened at Village Roadshow Studios on Australia's Gold Coast in Queensland, where they built enormous water tanks, one holding millions of gallons for those realistic underwater movements. They used a dry-for-wet technique a lot. Actors performed on rigs and harnesses against blue screens, simulating swimming motions while wires and harnesses helped mimic buoyancy. This let the VFX teams later add flowing hair, water effects, and massive creatures without drowning the cast. Practical sets were huge too. The lighthouse in Amnesty Bay, Maine was built on location in Hastings Point, New South Wales for those rugged coastal scenes. They shot in Newfoundland, Canada for icy, dramatic shores, Sicily, Italy for stunning Mediterranean backdrops that doubled as exotic surface locations, and even Morocco for desert-like sequences that added that epic, otherworldly feel. Over 600 local crew members in Queensland alone, plus hundreds of vendors. This production boosted economies and created jobs while capturing real-world beauty to contrast the hidden Atlantis. The visual effects were a monster effort. Over 2,300 VFX shots from studios like Industrial Light and Magic, Weta Digital, Method Studios, Scanline VFX, and more. They handled everything from high-detail hair simulations, Arthur's long locks flowing realistically underwater, to creating entire kingdoms with bioluminescent sea life. Charles Gibson, an Oscar winner for Babe and Pirates of the Caribbean, oversaw the VFX alongside Kelvin McElwain. Post-production took almost twice as long as principal photography. Wan announced it wrapped in November 2018. One standout, the trench sequence, where the heroes dive into a dark abyss filled with creepy creatures. Wan leaned into his horror roots here, making it tense and scary before exploding into action. He designed it to showcase the different underwater kingdoms Arthur will eventually rule, giving that sense of vast, undiscovered worlds. Costumes deserve their own shout-out. Kim Barrett crafted suits that blended ancient Atlantean aesthetics with high-tech flair. Arthur's iconic orange and green look got a modern upgrade with scale-like armor inspired by sea creatures and his tattoos. Mira's outfit flows elegantly, emphasizing her power over water. Orm's regal armor screams authority, while Black Manta's high-tech suit feels menacing and grounded in real military vibes. Dolph Lundgren as King Nereus wore heavy layers, wig, beard, helmet, multiple armor pieces that made him claustrophobic on harnesses, but he loved it so much he'd have done it for free. Trivia time, because every great movie has layers. Julie Andrews voicing the massive sea monster Carathan was a fun surprise. Her commanding voice fits perfectly. Lee Wannell, Wan's longtime collaborator from Saw, has a cameo as a cargo pilot. The Trident zoom shot where Arthur peers through its prongs homages a classic Aquaman comic cover. There's a 700 frames per second shot through Arthur's eyes for that intense close-up. And get this, the film features over 100 digitally created sea species, all with accurate anatomy to make the fantasy feel real. Deleted scenes? Wan cut a quirky prison escape where Arthur faces shark guards in a feeding frenzy. It was too wild even for this movie. Another flashback got trimmed to keep pacing tight. The soundtrack elevates everything. Rupert Gregson-Williams composed the score, building on his Wonder Woman work. He started with a tender theme for Arthur's parents, Atlanta and Thomas, that anchors the love story. Arthur's theme is heroic and swelling. Black Manta gets synth-heavy menace, and Orm's is ominous and non-melodic to build dread. The full orchestra recorded in London, mixed with electronics for that aquatic vibe. Standout tracks include The Legend of Atlan, Between Land and Sea, and He Commands the Sea. Pop songs add fun. Everything I Need by Skylar Grey, both film and radio versions, Ocean to Ocean by Pitbull featuring Rhea, sampling Toto's Africa, and even a bit from Joseph Bishara for The Trench. The music blends orchestral grandeur with modern beats, perfectly matching the film's tone. Box office-wise, Aquaman crushed it, over $1.152 billion worldwide, the highest-grossing DC film then, 5th biggest of 2018, and 20th all-time at release. It opened strong at $67.8 million domestically and dominated in China with $291.6 million. Home media added millions more. Blu-ray extras include featurettes, deleted scenes, and interviews. No director's cut exists per Wan because he got the vision right the first time. Why keep watching? Because Aquaman captures pure wonder, like discovering Pandora in Avatar or Middle-earth in Lord of the Rings, but underwater. It's about embracing who you are, bridging worlds, protecting the planet subtly through ocean themes, and having massive, colorful fun. The humor lands, the action thrills, the visuals stun, and the heart connects. Whether it's your first watch or 10th rewatch, new details pop, like subtle comic nods or VFX intricacies. We're still rolling with this epic deep dive into Aquaman, the 2018 masterpiece that turned the once-mocked King of the Seas into a billion-dollar cinematic force. If you've been listening along, you already know about the killer cast, James Wan's bold direction, the insane production scale, and why this movie feels like pure underwater magic. But there's still so much more juice left in this story. Let's keep swimming through the details, the fun facts, the creative decisions, and all those little touches that make rewatching Aquaman feel like discovering hidden treasure every single time. Grab another drink, get comfy, because we're going long again, and I'm not holding anything back. Let's zoom in on the world building, because Atlantis isn't just a backdrop. It's practically a living, breathing character in this film. James Wan and his team didn't want a generic underwater city. They wanted 7 distinct kingdoms, each with its own culture, architecture, technology, and vibe. Think of it like the different houses in Game of Thrones, but submerged and way more colorful. The main kingdom of Atlantis is this towering golden metropolis with massive spires, glowing coral structures, and vehicles that look like living sea creatures crossed with high-speed submarines. Then you've got the Fisherman Kingdom, more organic, almost tribal, with shell armor and whale-like mounts. The Trench is this pitch-black, terrifying abyss full of nightmare fuel creatures that crawl out of the dark. Zeeble, ruled by King Nereus, has this sleek, militaristic look with red and black tones. The deserters live in a desert wasteland under the sea. Yes, you heard that right, complete with sand dunes and ruined temples. The Brine Kingdom rides giant crabs into battle, and the Lost Tribe has this ancient, mystical energy with glowing runes everywhere. Every kingdom feels different because the production designers, Bill Brzezinski and his team, drew from real marine biology, ancient civilizations like Rome and Egypt, and even modern architecture to make them believable, yet fantastical. One of my favorite production stories is how they handled scale. Some of those underwater battle sequences involve thousands of soldiers, giant sea monsters, and entire fleets clashing. They couldn't build that practically, so the VFX teams used massive crowd simulations and procedural generation tools. For example, in the final war sequence, there are literally tens of thousands of digital Atlanteans fighting, each with individualized armor, weapons, and movements, so it never feels like copy-paste CGI. Industrial Light and Magic pushed their tech hard here. They even developed new water simulation software just for this movie to make every ripple, bubble, and current look photorealistic. When you watch it in IMAX or 4K, you can literally see individual scales on the armor reflecting light differently as they move through the water. That's the level of detail we're talking about. Now let's talk stunts and action choreography, because this movie doesn't skimp on the physicality. Stunt coordinator Kyle Gardner and second unit director Guy Norris created fights that blend martial arts, swordplay, and superhuman power. Jason Momoa trained for months in ocean swimming, trident fighting — they actually built weighted, balanced tridents for practice — and Hawaiian-style luai fighting to give Arthur's combat style that raw, island warrior edge. Amber Heard did intensive wire work and Krav Maga training, so Mera's water manipulation moves looked effortless and deadly. Patrick Wilson, playing Orm, spent hours in the tank learning to move gracefully underwater while wearing heavy armor. One sequence, the big prison escape in the beginning, was partially shot with real sharks in a massive aquarium tank in Australia. The crew had shark wranglers on set 24/7 to make sure everything was safe, but it added that primal fear factor you can feel on screen. Sound design is another unsung hero. Eric Adale and Ethan van der Ryn created an entire underwater audio language. Normal underwater sound is muffled, but they amplified certain frequencies so you hear the whoosh of water blades, the metallic clang of tridents, the deep bass rumble of massive creatures, and even the subtle clicks and hums of Atlantean tech. They recorded real ocean sounds, whale songs, dolphin clicks, crashing waves, and layered them into the mix. When the Carathan roars, it's this bone-rattling, multi-layered growl that makes your subwoofer work overtime. And don't sleep on the music again. Rupert Gregson-Williams wove in subtle leitmotifs that evolve throughout the film. Arthur's theme starts simple and folksy when he's on the surface, then grows epic and orchestral as he embraces his destiny. Mera's theme has this flowing, watery quality with harps and strings. It's subtle, but once you notice it, the score hits even harder. Trivia lovers, here's more gold. The movie has several Easter eggs for comic fans. Arthur's line, "I hate Atlantis," early on, is a nod to classic Aquaman comics, where he sometimes rejects his heritage. The design of the Trident itself matches the iconic weapon from the new 52 run. Black Manta's helmet has the classic red eyes glowing, and his suit's optic blasts are straight from the pages. There's even a subtle reference to the Justice League. When Arthur talks about the guy in the cape, it's obviously Superman. But they never say the name to keep the film standalone. And that post-credits scene? It teases the next chapter without spoiling anything major. Perfect fan service that leaves you smiling. Marketing was massive too. Warner Brothers dropped the first full trailer at San Diego Comic-Con 2018, and the crowd lost it when they saw the first glimpse of full Atlantis. They ran tie-ins with brands like Red Bull for energy drink promos, Subway for themed subs, yes really, and even a VR experience where you could swim through Atlantis. In China, where the film made almost $300 million, they released special posters emphasizing the family themes and epic battles because those resonated huge there. The global press tour had Jason Momoa, Amber Heard, and the cast hitting red carpets in full costume pieces, tridents, armor, the works, which generated endless photos and buzz. Reception details worth mentioning. While some critics called the plot predictable, almost everyone agreed the spectacle was unmatched. The Washington Post said it felt like a Saturday morning cartoon come to life, in the best way. IGN gave it high marks for embracing the silliness of Aquaman lore instead of trying to make it grim. Audience scores stayed strong because people loved the humor, the romance between Arthur and Mera, their chemistry is electric, and the fact that it's just plain fun. No grimdark brooding here, just colorful, larger-than-life heroism. If you're watching with family, kids love the giant sea creatures and the bright visuals. Adults get the deeper themes of identity, loyalty, and environmental respect. The surface world polluting the ocean is a quiet but clear message. Couples get the slow-burn romance that's equal parts banter and genuine connection. And action fans get non-stop set pieces. The Sicily chase on rooftops and motorbikes, the Sahara Desert fight with sandstorms and scorpions, the trench dive that's pure horror adventure, and the climactic kingdom versus kingdom war that feels like a oceanic Avengers-level battle. One last production nugget, James Wan shot a lot of the emotional scenes, like the moments between Arthur and his father Tom, in natural light at the real lighthouse set to keep them grounded and intimate. That contrast between quiet human moments and explosive spectacle is what gives the film heart. Nicole Kidman's scenes as Atlan were shot with heavy de-aging VFX, but she still performed every stunt herself. She was in her 50s and kicking ass in full armor. Respect. So where does all this leave us? Aquaman is the kind of movie that reminds you why we go to the theater, or why we binge at home with the best sound system we can find. It's big, bold, beautiful, funny, romantic, thrilling, and surprisingly heartfelt. It takes a character people used to laugh at and makes him undeniably cool. It builds a whole mythology under the waves that feels ancient and futuristic at the same time. And most importantly, it delivers that rare feeling of pure cinematic joy, the kind where you walk out or finish streaming and immediately want to tell everyone, you have to see this. We're still riding this massive wave through Aquaman 2018, the movie that proved once and for all that the King of Atlantis could carry his own blockbuster and make it look effortless. If you've been following along, we've already unpacked the cast chemistry, James Wan's genius direction, the jaw-dropping production logistics, the insane VFX wizardry, the killer soundtrack, and all those juicy trivia nuggets that make the film even richer on repeat viewings. But there's one more layer I want to peel back before we wrap this epic breakdown. The cultural impact, the legacy this movie left behind, how it changed perceptions of Aquaman forever, and why, even years later in 2026, people are still talking about it, rewatching it, and recommending it like crazy. Let's keep the conversation going because this film deserves every last bit of love. First, let's talk about how Aquaman flipped the script on the character himself. For decades, Aquaman was the punchline, the guy who talked to fish in the Justice League cartoons, the one people mocked in memes. But James Wan and Jason Momoa took that and turned it into pure strength. They leaned into the absurdity and made it awesome. Arthur Curry isn't some polished prince. He's a beer-drinking, tattooed, half-breed lighthouse kid who rides sharks, punches submarines, and quips his way through royal politics. That shift made him relatable in a way no other DC hero quite was at the time. Fans who grew up with the old comics suddenly saw their guy get the respect he deserved, and new audiences discovered him as this badass anti-hero. It's no wonder Jason Momoa became synonymous with the role. He brought his own Hawaiian roots, his natural swagger, and that infectious laugh to make Arthur feel real, not like a comic book caricature. The film also did something huge for representation. Jason Momoa is the first actor of Polynesian descent to lead a major superhero franchise like this, and he wore his heritage proudly. The tattoos, the warrior spirit, the connection to the ocean, it's all there, woven into the character without feeling forced. Kids around the world, especially in places like Hawaii, the Pacific Islands, and even here in India where ocean myths run deep, saw someone who looked like them commanding the seas. That's powerful stuff. And Amber Heard as Mera? She wasn't just the love interest, she was a powerhouse queen in the making, with her own agency, her own powers, and her own arc that stands toe-to-toe with Arthur's. In a genre that sometimes sidelines women, Mera's role felt fresh and empowering. Let's touch on the sequel real quick, without any spoilers, of course. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom came out in 2023, and while it had its own vibe, a lot of people say the magic really started with this first film. The 2018 version set the bar so high with its world building, its humor, its scale, that it became the blueprint. Fans still debate which one they prefer, but almost everyone agrees the original is the one that feels like pure discovery, like stepping into Atlantis for the first time and being blown away by how vast and alive it is. Now, some fun legacy trivia. After the movie's success, DC Comics relaunched Aquaman titles with even more focus on the Seven Kingdoms, the Trident lore, and Arthur's family drama. Merchandise exploded. Funko Pops of every character, Lego sets of the Trident battles, even video games like Injustice 2 got updated with movie-accurate skins. Conventions still have huge Aquaman cosplay groups, and the orange and green suit is one of the most recognizable superhero looks out there. In pop culture, the phrase, "I am Aquaman," became a meme-worthy moment of self-empowerment. And that Sicily chase scene? It's still referenced in action movie breakdowns as one of the best rooftop pursuits since the Bourne series. One thing that keeps coming up in fan discussions is how this movie bridged the gap between the gritty Snyder-era DC and the brighter, more fun tone that followed. It was the perfect pivot, still epic and serious when it needed to be, but never afraid to crack a joke or embrace the wildness of comic book lore. James Wan has said in interviews that he wanted to make a film that felt like the comics he loved as a kid, colorful, adventurous, and unapologetically big. He succeeded so well that Aquaman became the highest-grossing film directed by a horror filmmaker ever, and one of the few solo DC movies to crack the billion-dollar club. If you're watching with friends or family, here's a pro tip. Pay attention to the little details in the background. Every kingdom has its own currency, its own symbols, its own way of moving through the water. The creatures aren't just monsters, they're part of the ecosystem. Some friendly, some terrifying, all beautifully designed. And the romance? It's slow, it's banter-heavy, it's built on mutual respect, and it never overshadows the action. That's rare in superhero films. Environmental themes sneak in too. The surface world's pollution, the way humans treat the ocean, the call for balance between land and sea, it's there, subtle but powerful. In 2026, with climate conversations louder than ever, those moments hit even harder. The film doesn't preach. It just shows a world worth saving, and that makes the stakes feel real. We've been on this underwater journey for a while now, haven't we? From the first splash into James Wan's visionary direction to the massive production that built entire kingdoms beneath the waves, the star-studded cast that brought Arthur Curry to life, the mind-blowing VFX that made every ripple and roar feel real, the soundtrack that swells like the tide, and the cultural wave this movie created. We've covered a ton. But let's not surface just yet. There's still more to explore about why Aquaman 2018 remains such a standout in the superhero landscape, even here in 2026. Its legacy is stronger than ever, and it continues to inspire fans, spark conversations, and hold up as one of the most visually ambitious blockbusters out there. So let's keep diving. There's treasure left to uncover. One of the things that really sets Aquaman apart is how it embraced the sheer weirdness of the comics without apology. James Wan has talked openly in interviews about wanting to capture the wild and absurd side of Aquaman lore. The giant sea creatures, the multiple kingdoms, the trident-wielding battles, because that's what makes the character unique. He didn't shy away from the classic orange and green suit either. Early on, there was some debate about whether to include that iconic look, but Wan pushed for it, modernizing it with scale armor and tattoo-inspired details while keeping the bold colors. It paid off huge. That suit became instantly recognizable again, and fans loved seeing the classic Aquaman honored in a big way. Wan even said he was thrilled to have Momoa shirtless in key scenes because it fit Arthur's rugged, larger-than-life vibe. Pure fun, no shame. Behind the scenes, the challenges were enormous, but they led to some legendary moments. Take that one-shot action sequence with Nicole Kidman as Atlanta early in the film, fighting off attackers in the lighthouse and on the beach. It looks seamless on screen, but it took 3 full days to film because of the precise choreography, camera movements, and practical effects. Kidman trained hard in martial arts to pull it off, and Wan called it one of the toughest shoots because they wanted it to feel raw and real amid all the spectacle. Another fun fact, Wan hid a cheeky Easter egg from his own Conjuring universe, an Annabelle doll sitting on the ocean floor amid some rotting fish containers. It's quick, but fans spotted it, and Wan loved the crossover nod. Deleted scenes are always fascinating, and Aquaman has a few gems that got cut for pacing. One that Wan has mentioned regretting a bit was a wild prison escape sequence from an early script. Arthur breaking out of an Atlantean jail with shark guards, leading to a feeding frenzy riot. It was deemed too over the top, even for this movie, but Wan said he loved how it embraced the absurdity. Other trims included extended flashbacks of young Arthur's training or more banter between characters. The final cut clocks in at 143 minutes, and test screenings helped tighten it so the emotional beats, like the heartfelt moments between Arthur's parents, Atlanta and Tom Curry, land perfectly without dragging. Easter eggs are everywhere if you look close. The Trident design matches classic comic versions. Black Manta's helmet gets a meta joke about needing a bigger one after it shatters, a nod to both comics and Jaws. And there's a subtle Justice League tie-in when Arthur mentions the guy in the cape. Comic fans spot nods to the New 52 run by Jeff Johns, Seven Kingdoms, the Trench Creatures, even hints of Topo the Octopus in the background vibes. One cool detail, when Mera and Arthur grab her vehicle from a shipping container, watch the seafloor, there's that Annabelle doll again, tying into Wan's horror roots. Culturally, Aquaman hit different in markets around the world. In China, it earned over $290 million, one of the biggest hauls for any DC film there, thanks to the family themes, epic battles, and stunning visuals that resonated hugely. In the Philippines, it became Warner Brothers' top-grossing film ever at the time. The movie's success, $1.152 billion worldwide, made it the highest-grossing DC film until then, the 5th biggest of 2018 and the 20th all-time highest earner upon release. It proved that a character once seen as a joke could be a global phenomenon when handled with respect, humor, and spectacle. Home media kept the momentum going. The Blu-ray dropped in March 2019 with tons of extras, featurettes on the kingdoms, deleted scenes, breakdowns of the VFX, and interviews. It sold strong, and even today, fans revisit it for those behind-the-scenes looks. The sequel, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in 2023, built on this foundation but didn't quite match the original's billion-dollar magic, wrapping up the DCEU era. With the new DC Universe kicking off under James Gunn and Peter Safran, the old continuity ended there. No direct Aquaman 3 in the works, though Jason Momoa might pop up elsewhere. Rumors always swirl about him as Lobo. But the 2018 film stands alone as a complete, satisfying adventure. Its legacy is secure. What keeps people coming back? It's the perfect blend of heart and spectacle. The romance between Arthur and Mera feels earned through banter and shared battles. The family drama, Arthur's divided heritage, Orm's resentment, adds real stakes. And the environmental undertones about protecting the oceans hit home without lecturing. In an era of superhero fatigue, Aquaman reminds us why we love these stories. For the wonder, the escapism, the larger-than-life heroes who rise from unlikely places. We're still plunging deeper into the world of Aquaman, the 2018 film that took a character long dismissed as a joke and turned him into one of the most visually spectacular and emotionally resonant superheroes on screen. We've explored the direction, the cast that brought every character to life with real fire, the production that literally built oceans on sound stages, the VFX that redefined underwater spectacle, the soundtrack that carries you through every swell and crash, the Easter eggs that reward comic fans, and the lasting legacy that keeps this movie fresh even now. But there's always more beneath the surface, so let's keep exploring why this film continues to hook people years later, and why it remains the perfect recommendation for anyone craving an adventure that's equal parts thrilling, funny, heartfelt, and downright beautiful. One aspect that often gets overlooked but deserves huge credit is the film's pacing and structure. At 143 minutes, it could have felt bloated, but James Wan and the editors, Kirk Morey and Walter Hamada's team, nailed the rhythm. The movie opens with that high-energy, almost horror-tinged prologue introducing Atlanta and the surface threat, then shifts to grounded, character-driven moments with Arthur as a reluctant hero in his small coastal town. From there, it builds momentum. The introduction of Mera, the first big action set piece in Sicily with rooftop chases and motorcycle flips, the descent into the trench that's pure edge-of-your-seat tension, the Sahara Desert sequence that flips the underwater world on its head with sandstorms and scorpions, and finally, the massive kingdom war that feels like an oceanic Lord of the Rings battle. Every sequence escalates the stakes while giving breathing room for humor, romance, and character growth. Wan has said he treated the film like a classic adventure serial. Each chapter delivers a payoff while setting up the next, keeping you locked in without ever feeling rushed or dragged. The humor is another secret weapon. Jason Momoa's natural comedic timing shines in lines like his deadpan reactions to Atlantean pomp or his fish-out-of-water, literally, moments on land. The banter between Arthur and Mera crackles with chemistry. Her regal seriousness clashing with his laid-back sarcasm creates sparks that feel authentic and fun. Even smaller characters get great one-liners. Volko's dry wit, Tom Curry's proud dad energy, or Black Manta's cold menace laced with dark humor. Wan encouraged improvisation on set, especially with Momoa, who brought his own Hawaiian slang and laid-back vibe to scenes. That looseness keeps the tone light even during the heaviest moments, making the emotional beats hit harder because you care about these people. And then let's talk about the creature design for a second, because it's phenomenal. Every sea beast feels like it could exist in some undiscovered part of the ocean. The Carathan, voiced by Julie Andrews, is this colossal, ancient guardian with tentacles, glowing eyes, and a roar that shakes the frame. Yet Andrews' warm, authoritative delivery makes it feel almost wise rather than just terrifying. The trench dwellers are nightmare fuel. Pale, eyeless horrors with needle teeth that move like swarms of piranhas crossed with deep-sea anglerfish. Then you've got the friendly side, giant seahorses used as mounts, whale-like transports, crab armies from the Brine Kingdom. All of them were motion captured and animated with obsessive detail, so their movements feel natural in water. The VFX teams studied real marine life footage for hours to get the propulsion, the tail flicks, the way light bends through translucent fins. It's that commitment to realism within fantasy that makes the impossible feel believable. Another layer worth appreciating is how the film handles its villains. Orm isn't a cartoonish bad guy. He's a product of his upbringing, shaped by resentment, duty, and a twisted sense of protecting Atlantis. Patrick Wilson brings nuance. His quiet intensity makes you understand his motivations even as you root against him. Black Manta, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, is driven by personal vengeance, and his high-tech suit and ruthless precision make him a credible threat. Neither feels one-dimensional. They're mirrors to Arthur, showing what happens when heritage and pain twist in different directions. That depth elevates the conflicts beyond simple good versus evil. Visually, the color palette is a character in itself. Surface scenes are muted blues, grays, and earthy tones, realistic, grounded. As soon as you go underwater, it explodes. Vibrant corals, neon bioluminescence, golden Atlantean architecture, emerald greens, deep purples. Wan wanted the underwater world to feel alive and magical, like a living painting. Cinematographer Don Burgess used practical lights underwater where possible, then enhanced with VFX to create that dreamlike glow. In IMAX or high-end home setups, the colors pop in ways that make you feel like you're swimming through a coral reef at sunset. For anyone making a review video, here's a great angle. Talk about how Aquaman proves spectacle and story aren't enemies. Too many blockbusters lean on effects at the expense of heart. This one balances both. The VFX serve the emotion. When Arthur finally wields the trident, the lighting, the music, the slow-motion water all build to that triumphant moment. When Mera manipulates massive waves, it's not just cool, it's a visual metaphor for her power and independence. Every big set piece has purpose beyond looking pretty. Years on, the film's influence is clear. It opened the door for more colorful, mythology-driven superhero stories. It showed that embracing a character's silly elements can make them iconic rather than campy. It proved diverse casting and cultural authenticity can drive massive global success. And it remains one of the few DC films that feels complete on its own, No heavy setup for crossovers required, just a self-contained epic. So if you're still on the fence about watching or rewatching Aquaman, let me make it simple. This is the movie that reminds you superheroes can be fun again. It's big without being empty, emotional without being heavy, wild without being chaotic. It's the kind of film that leaves you smiling, energized, and maybe even a little inspired to dive into your own adventures, whatever they may be. We're still cruising through the depths of Aquaman, the 2018 film that proved you can take a superhero once ridiculed for talking to fish and turn him into a global phenomenon with heart, humor, and visuals that still hold up as some of the best in the genre. We've gone over the direction that blended horror tension with pure adventure joy, the cast chemistry that makes every interaction pop, the production madness of building massive water tanks and shooting across continents, the VFX wizardry that brought Atlantis to life, the soundtrack that pulls you under like a riptide, the Easter eggs that reward eagle-eyed viewers, the pacing that keeps you glued, and the legacy that keeps this movie relevant and rewatchable. But let's keep going because there's always one more current to ride when you're talking about a film this layered. One thing that really elevates Aquaman is how it uses practical locations to ground the fantasy. Even though most of the movie happens underwater, the surface world scenes feel authentic and lived in. The Amnesty Bay lighthouse where Arthur grows up wasn't just a set. It was built on a real rocky coastline in New South Wales, Australia, with crashing waves and salty air captured on location. Those quiet, intimate moments between Arthur and his dad Tom, played so warmly by Temuera Morrison, carry extra weight because you can feel the real wind and hear the real ocean. It creates this beautiful contrast, the rugged human world above versus the opulent alien empire below. When Arthur first steps into full Atlantean armor and dives in, that shift from earthy realism to glowing fantasy hits like a tidal wave. It's a smart storytelling choice. Juan uses the practical to make the impossible feel earned. The fight choreography deserves its own spotlight too. Every major battle has its own personality. The Sicily chase mixes parkour, bike stunts, and hydrokinetic blasts in a way that feels chaotic yet controlled. Think Bourne Identity meets water magic. The trench sequence is straight-up survival horror. Dark, claustrophobic, with creatures lunging from every shadow. The Sahara fight flips the script entirely. Sand instead of water, heat instead of cold, scorpions instead of sharks. Yet it still feels like part of the same world because the characters move with the same superhuman grace. Then the climactic war is pure scale. Armies clashing, giant mounts charging, tridents flashing through the water. The stunt team layered practical wire work with digital enhancements so the actors could perform real impacts and reactions. Jason Momoa has said he loved doing as much as possible himself. He trained in the ocean off Hawaii to get that natural swimmer's power, and you can see it in how fluidly Arthur moves through battles. Let's geek out on costume details for a minute because they're insane. Kim Barrett's designs aren't just pretty, they tell stories. Arthur's suit evolves subtly throughout the film, starting with a makeshift diver's look, then the classic orange and green with scale patterns inspired by his Polynesian tattoos, and finally, the regal golden trident armor for the big finale. Every piece has purpose. The scales catch light differently underwater. The helmet has breathing slits that look like gills. The gauntlets have built-in grips for wielding the trident. Mera's outfit flows like liquid metal, with red accents that pop against the blues and greens of Atlantis. Orm's armor is heavier, more angular, almost militaristic, reflecting his rigid worldview. Black Manta's suit is sleek black with glowing red eyes, practical, intimidating, and straight out of a nightmare. Even side characters like the Fisherman King or the Brine Warriors have unique textures, shell plates, coral inlays, bioluminescent markings. It's costume design as world building. The film's tone also nails something rare. It lets characters be vulnerable without losing their strength. Arthur's reluctance isn't played for laughs in a cheap way. He genuinely struggles with belonging to two worlds that hate each other. Mera's loyalty to her people clashes with her growing feelings for Arthur. Orm's anger comes from real pain and a sense of duty twisted by betrayal. These aren't just plot devices. They give the spectacle emotional weight. When big moments happen, without spoiling anything, the payoff feels earned because you've seen the characters earn their growth through doubt, conflict, and connection. Visually, one of the most impressive tricks is how they handled scale underwater. In real life, water distorts distance and light, so the VFX team created depth cues that make kingdoms feel miles wide even though you're looking at a screen. Massive structures recede into hazy blue distance. Schools of fish swirl in the foreground. Light shafts pierce from above. It creates that sense of vastness you get when scuba diving in deep water. Beautiful, but also a little overwhelming. Wan wanted viewers to feel small in the best way, like they're discovering something ancient and powerful. If you're scripting a review video, here's a killer closing angle. Aquaman is the superhero movie that says it's okay to be big, bold, colorful, and fun. In an era where some films chase grit or irony, this one embraces wonder without apology. It reminds us that heroes don't have to be tortured loners. They can be messy, funny, loyal, and still save the day. It's a love letter to comics, to adventure stories, to the idea that the world beneath the surface is worth exploring. So grab the remote, hit play, and let Aquaman sweep you away. Let the music rise, the colors explode, the action crash over you like a wave. This isn't just entertainment. It's a reminder that sometimes the deepest stories are the ones that make you feel alive. We're keeping this epic exploration of Aquaman, the 2018 film that redefined what a superhero movie can be, rolling strong. We've delved into the visionary direction that mixes heart-pounding action with genuine emotion, the cast that turns every scene into a masterclass in chemistry, the massive production that spanned continents and built underwater wonders, the VFX that still sets the standard for immersive worlds, the soundtrack that ebbs and flows like the tides, the pacing that keeps you on the edge of your seat, the costume designs that tell stories through every scale and seam, and so much more. But there's always another layer to uncover in a film this rich. So let's dive into the thematic depths, the subtle influences, the fan-favorite moments that spark endless discussions, and why this movie isn't just entertainment. It's a blueprint for how to blend spectacle with soul. At its core, Aquaman is a story about identity and belonging, wrapped in a package that's as entertaining as it is thoughtful. Arthur Curry, this half-human, half-Atlantean powerhouse, embodies that feeling of being caught between worlds, never fully at home on land or under the sea. Without spoiling a single beat, his journey encourages us to embrace our complexities, to find strength in what makes us different. It's a message that resonates universally, whether you're dealing with family dynamics, cultural heritage, or just figuring out your place in the world. James Wan weaves this in subtly, through quiet conversations by the lighthouse or amid the glowing halls of Atlantis, making the big action feel personal. If you've ever felt like an outsider, Arthur's arc will hit you right in the feels, all while delivering thrills that leave you cheering. The environmental angle is another gem that adds real-world relevance. The film subtly highlights the tensions between the surface world and the oceans, pollution, exploitation, the fragile balance of ecosystems, without ever turning preachy. It's there in the way Atlantis reacts to human actions, in the majestic sea creatures that command respect, in the call for unity across divides. In today's conversations about conservation, this theme feels even more timely, reminding us that protecting our planet isn't just a duty, it's an adventure worth fighting for. Wan has mentioned drawing from real ocean mysteries, like the Mariana Trench or undiscovered marine life, to inspire the designs, grounding the fantasy in something tangible and urgent. Let's geek out on the influences that shaped this film, because they're a treasure trove. Wan pulled from classic adventure flicks like Raiders of the Lost Ark for the globe-trotting quests and artifact hunts. The way Arthur chases legends feels straight out of Indiana Jones, but with a watery twist. There's a dash of romancing the stone in the budding romance between Arthur and Mera, full of witty sparring and shared dangers. Star Wars echoes in the vast kingdoms and epic battles, while Wan's horror roots show up in sequences like the trench dive, where the dark, unknown depths build suspense like a conjuring jump scare. Even fantasy epics like Lord of the Rings influence the sense of ancient lore and massive armies clashing. It's this blend that makes Aquaman feel familiar yet fresh, comfort food for movie lovers, elevated with modern flair. Fan discussions often circle back to standout scenes that showcase the film's creativity. Take the way they handle underwater dialogue. Characters speak clearly, but the sound design adds this subtle echo and bubble effect, making it feel immersive without being distracting. Or the innovative camera work. long, sweeping shots that follow characters through water like they're flying thanks to harness rigs and blue screen magic. One particularly inventive moment involves Mera using her powers in a vineyard, turning everyday elements into weapons in ways that surprise and delight. These aren't just gimmicks, they're tied to character strengths, making the action feel clever and character-driven. The supporting characters add so much flavor, too. Willem Dafoe's Vulko is this stoic mentor with hidden depths, dispensing wisdom and training Arthur in secret ways that hint at a long history. Dolph Lundgren's King Nereus brings that commanding presence, his red armor and trident, making him look like a force of nature. Yahya Abdul-Mateen. The second's Black Manta is a tech-savvy antagonist whose gadgets and grudge add a grounded, high-stakes edge. Even smaller roles like Ludi Lin's Merc or Randall Park's Dr. Shin pop with personality. Shin as this obsessive scientist obsessed with proving Atlantis exists, adding comic relief and a bridge to the surface world's curiosity. The voice cast elevates the mythical elements. Julie Andrews' Carathan booms with gravitas, Jimon Hounsou and John Rhys-Davies lend their iconic tones to underwater rulers, making every kingdom feel alive and distinct. Production anecdotes are endless and fascinating. During filming in Morocco for the desert scenes, the crew dealt with real sandstorms that added authenticity but challenged the equipment. Juan turned it into an advantage, incorporating the grit for that epic feel. In Sicily, locals watched in awe as stunt teams leaped across rooftops, blending seamlessly with CGI water effects added later. The Australian water tanks were so massive they could simulate ocean currents, letting actors practice swimming against resistance for realistic movements. Post-production involved endless tweaks. The VFX team rendered individual bubbles in key shots, ensuring physics looked spot on. Rupert Gregson-Williams adjusted the score multiple times to match the final cuts, layering in more electronic pulses for Black Manta's theme to amp up the menace. Why does all this make Aquaman a must-watch? Because it delivers on every level. Visually stunning for the eyes, emotionally engaging for the heart, intellectually stimulating with its lore, and just plain fun for the soul. It's the kind of movie that rewards multiple viewings. First time for the wow factor, second for the details you missed, third for the themes that stick with you. Whether you're a comic diehard spotting nods to Jeff Johns' New 52 or a casual viewer swept up in the adventure, it has layers for everyone. Imagine settling in with popcorn, the lights low as the opening waves crash and the story unfolds. You'll laugh at Arthur's quips, gasp at the reveals, cheer the triumphs, and maybe even feel a little inspired to face your own oceans. This isn't a film you watch once and forget. It's one that pulls you back, like the tide returning to shore. We're still deep in the currents of Aquaman, the 2018 film that took a superhero long mocked in memes and turned him into a billion-dollar beacon of spectacle, heart, and unapologetic fun. We've unpacked the direction that fuses high-stakes adventure with genuine emotion, the cast whose chemistry crackles like electricity in water, the production feats that literally flooded sound stages and scouted the globe, the visual effects that make every underwater vista feel alive and breathing, the score that swells and crashes in perfect harmony with the story, the pacing that builds like a gathering storm, the costumes that layer meaning into every detail, the themes of identity and balance that linger long after the credits roll, and the influences that make this feel like a love letter to classic adventure cinema. But let's keep swimming because there's always one more current carrying us toward why this movie endures as a must-watch gem. One of the quiet strengths of Aquaman is its world consistency. Every element reinforces the others, so the fantasy never feels disjointed. The technology of Atlantis, for instance, isn't random sci-fi gadgets. It's bioorganic, fused with marine life in ways that feel evolved over millennia. Weapons glow with bioluminescence, vehicles glide like living eels, armor mimics shark skin for hydrodynamic perfection. This isn't just cool design, it's logical within the story's rules. When characters ride massive sea creatures into battle, it doesn't feel cartoonish because the film has already established that these beings are part of an ancient, interconnected ecosystem. That attention to internal logic makes the impossible believable, letting you fully surrender to the wonder without questioning how it all works. The film's sense of scale is another standout. Most superhero movies limit their big moments to city blocks or single buildings. This one goes planetary. Battles span entire ocean trenches. Kingdoms rise and fall across vast underwater continents. Armies number in the thousands with fleets of crab-riding warriors and whale-mounted archers. Yet it never loses sight of the human, or half-human element. Even in the grandest sequences, the camera lingers on faces. Arthur's determination, Mera's fierce resolve, Orm's conflicted rage, so the spectacle serves the characters rather than overwhelming them. James Wan has a knack for this balance. He knows when to pull back for the epic wide shot and when to zoom in for an intimate reaction. It's filmmaking craft that elevates the blockbuster formula. Let's shine a light on the romance for a moment, because it's one of the most underrated aspects. Arthur and Mera don't fall into the typical instant attraction trap. Their connection grows through shared danger, mutual respect, and plenty of friction. She challenges his cynicism. He softens her rigid sense of duty. Their banter feels natural, sharp, playful, occasionally exasperated, and it builds slowly, making the deeper moments land with real weight. In a genre full of rushed love stories, this one takes its time, letting chemistry simmer until it boils over in ways that feel earned. It's equal parts partnership and passion, with both characters remaining strong individuals throughout. That dynamic adds emotional stakes to the action, turning every rescue or joint fight into something personal. The film's humor also deserves more credit than it sometimes gets. It's never forced or winky. It's character-driven. Arthur's fish-out-of-water quips come from genuine discomfort in a world that feels alien to him. Mera's dry sarcasm cuts through pompous Atlantean ceremony. Even the villains get moments of dark wit that make them more than cardboard threats. Wan encouraged the actors to play with lines on set, especially Jason Momoa, whose improvisations add that loose, lived-in feel. The result is a movie that laughs at itself without undermining its stakes, rare in big-budget cinema, where tone can swing wildly between grim and goofy. Here it stays confident, big enough to embrace the absurdity, grounded enough to make you care. Another layer that rewards attention is the soundscape beyond the score. The Foley artists and sound designers created an entire underwater audio universe. Muffled thuds when fists connect in deep water, high-pitched whines of energy weapons cutting through currents, the low rumble of tectonic plates shifting during battles, the eerie clicks of trench creatures echoing in darkness. They even layered real whale songs and dolphin communications into background ambience, making the ocean feel populated and ancient. When silence drops, like intense standoffs or moments of awe, it hits harder because of all the layered noise that came before. It's immersive audio design that turns your speakers or headphones into portals. For anyone putting together a review video, here's a strong hook to close strong. Aquaman is proof that superhero movies can still surprise us. It doesn't chase trends or mimic what's come before. It carves its own path with bold colors, wild imagination, and a hero who feels refreshingly human. In a landscape of reboots and crossovers, this stands alone as a complete, self-contained epic that delivers joy, wonder, and just enough depth to stick with you. It's the kind of film you recommend to friends not because it's important, but because it's fun in the purest, most exhilarating sense. Picture this. You hit play, the screen fills with crashing waves, the music rises like a swelling tide, and suddenly you're not just watching a movie. You're exploring a hidden world, rooting for a hero finding his place, laughing at the absurdity, gasping at the scale, and feeling that rush of pure cinematic escape. That's the magic Aquaman captures. We're still riding this incredible wave through Aquaman, the 2018 film that turned the tides on what a superhero blockbuster could be, delivering one of the most visually intoxicating, emotionally grounded, and downright joyful cinematic rides of the decade. We've covered the masterful direction that balances epic scope with intimate heartbeats, the ensemble cast whose performances make every exchange feel alive, the production that transformed sound stages into oceans and real-world locations into myth, the groundbreaking visual effects that let us swim through glowing kingdoms, the score that surges like the ocean itself, the clever pacing that builds tension and release in perfect rhythm, the costume craftsmanship that turns fabric into storytelling, the layered themes of identity, heritage, and harmony that give the spectacle real weight, and the influences that pull from classic adventures while forging something entirely new. But let's keep plunging deeper. There's still so much richness left to celebrate in this film, and every detail makes it clearer why Aquaman deserves to be on every must-watch list. One of the film's greatest triumphs is its fearless embrace of scale without ever losing intimacy. Many blockbusters go big and end up feeling empty, but Aquaman uses its grandeur to amplify character moments. When Arthur stands before the ancient Trident, the camera doesn't just show a massive artifact. It lingers on his face, capturing doubt, wonder, and quiet determination. When armies clash across underwater plains, the chaos is breathtaking. Yet the lens keeps finding individuals. A soldier's fear, a leader's resolve, Arthur's growing sense of purpose. This push and pull between the colossal and the personal is what makes the movie breathe. James Wan understands that spectacle is most powerful when it's in service of emotion, when the biggest set pieces feel like they matter to the people inside them. That's why the finale doesn't just look impressive, it feels triumphant on a deeply human level. The film's sense of wonder is another element that keeps pulling people back. From the moment the camera first drops beneath the waves and reveals Atlantis in all its golden, bioluminescent glory, there's this childlike awe that carries through the entire runtime. The Seven Kingdoms aren't just different aesthetics, they're different cultures, each with its own history, art, and way of life. The Fisherman Kingdom feels ancient and harmonious, almost meditative with its organic shapes and gentle currents. The Trench is primal terror, a reminder that the deep still holds secrets we can't comprehend. Zeeble has this sleek, almost futuristic edge, while the Brine Kingdom feels rugged and warlike. Every design choice reinforces the idea that Atlantis isn't one monolithic empire. It's a fractured, diverse world, mirroring our own surface societies in ways that add quiet depth. When you watch it, you don't just see pretty CGI, you feel the weight of centuries of hidden civilization suddenly revealed. The action choreography continues to impress on repeat viewings because it's so varied and inventive. No two fights feel the same. The early prison brawl is raw and brutal, all close quarters fury and improvised weapons. The Sicily rooftop chase blends high-speed parkour with bursts of water manipulation that turn architecture into a playground. The trench descent is survival horror, claustrophobic, relentless, with every shadow hiding teeth. The desert sequence flips physics on its head, using sand like water and turning a barren wasteland into an arena of chaos. Then the Kingdom War explodes into something operatic. Thousands of warriors, massive mounts charging through currents, tridents clashing in slow-motion sprays of bubbles and light. Each sequence has its own rhythm, its own visual language, yet they all feel connected through Arthur's evolving fighting style. He starts scrappy and land-based, then gradually incorporates Atlantean fluidity until he's moving like the ocean itself. That's character growth told through movement. The dialogue also shines brighter the more you listen. Beyond the big one-liners, there's sharp, economical writing that reveals character in small exchanges. Arthur's blunt honesty cuts through Atlantean formality like a knife. Mera's precise, almost regal speech contrasts beautifully with his casual sarcasm, creating tension and attraction at the same time. Volko's measured wisdom carries centuries of experience in every word. Even Orm's declarations of war aren't cartoon villainy. They're rooted in a worldview that's tragic and understandable, even if it's wrong. The script trusts the audience to pick up on subtext, letting silences and glances carry as much weight as the lines themselves. That's confident writing in a genre that sometimes over-explains. Another reason Aquaman holds up so well is its rewatch value. First viewing, pure spectacle overload. Second viewing, you start noticing the background details, the intricate carvings on palace walls, the way light refracts differently in each kingdom, the subtle color grading shifts that signal emotional tone. Third viewing, you catch the foreshadowing in early scenes, the way seemingly throwaway lines set up major payoffs, the quiet callbacks that tie everything together. It's built like a puzzle that reveals more pieces every time you look. And because the tone stays consistent, bold, colorful, earnest without being cynical, it never feels dated or tired. So here's the simple truth. Aquaman is the superhero movie that remembers why we fell in love with the genre in the first place. It's about wonder, about larger-than-life heroes facing impossible odds, about finding your place in a vast and complicated world. It doesn't lecture, It doesn't wink too hard at the camera. It just delivers an unapologetically entertaining, visually astonishing, emotionally satisfying experience from start to finish. If you haven't watched it in a while, or if you've never seen it at all, do yourself a favor. Dim the lights, crank the sound, and let the ocean pull you under. Let the music rise, the colors explode, the action sweep you away. You'll come up for air feeling energized, maybe even a little inspired, and definitely ready to tell everyone you know that they need to experience this movie. We're still submerged in the world of Aquaman, the 2018 film that proved a superhero movie could be massive, colorful, heartfelt, hilarious, and utterly unforgettable all at once. We've explored the direction that turns every frame into a visual feast, the cast whose energy makes the screen feel electric, the production scale that built literal oceans and scouted the planet for perfect shots, the VFX that let us believe in glowing underwater cities and ancient sea guardians, the soundtrack that rises and falls like the tide itself, the pacing that keeps momentum surging without ever feeling rushed, the costumes that layer mythology into every thread and scale, the themes of belonging and balance that give the spectacle real emotional depth, the influences from classic adventures that make it feel timeless, the rewatch value that reveals new treasures every time, and the fearless embrace of wonder that sets it apart from so many other blockbusters. But let's keep going. There's always one more current pulling us deeper into why this movie is worth every minute of your time. One of the things that quietly makes Aquaman so special is its confidence in tone. It never apologizes for being big, bright, and bold. Where some superhero films hedge their bets with irony or self-deprecation, this one leans all the way in. Orange and green suits, trident-wielding kings, armies riding giant crabs, a colossal ancient sea monster voiced by Julie Andrews. It's all there, presented with total conviction. James Wan and the team understood that the key to making the absurd feel epic is to treat it seriously. They don't wink at the camera or undercut the stakes with too much meta-humor. Instead, they let the spectacle speak for itself, trusting the audience to go along for the ride. That trust pays off huge, because when the film commits fully to its own mythology, you commit too. You accept that this world exists, that these characters matter, and that the stakes are genuinely planetary. It's liberating in a genre that sometimes feels weighed down by cynicism. The film's sense of place is another quiet triumph. Atlantis isn't just a backdrop. It's a living, breathing civilization with texture and history. You feel the weight of its past in the weathered stone of ancient ruins, the glow of bioluminescent flora that lights entire cities, the way currents carve paths through towering spires like wind through canyons. Every kingdom has its own atmosphere. The fisherman realm feels serene and almost spiritual, with soft blues and gentle floating lanterns. The trench is oppressive darkness pierced only by faint, sickly glows. Atlantis proper is regal and golden, all soaring architecture and intricate mosaics that tell stories of forgotten wars and heroes. When the camera sweeps through these spaces, it doesn't just show beauty, it conveys culture, age, pride, and fragility. You understand why the Atlanteans are so protective, why they view the surface world with suspicion. That depth of world building makes the conflicts feel real and urgent, even when they're fought with laser tridents and shark-riding soldiers. The supporting performances add layers that elevate the whole experience. Take Temuera Morrison as Tom Curry, Arthur's human father and lighthouse keeper. In just a handful of scenes, he conveys decades of love, loss, and quiet strength. His simple line deliveries about family and home ground the fantastical elements in something profoundly relatable. Nicole Kidman's Atlanta is regal, yet fiercely protective, her presence commanding even in brief flashbacks. Willem Dafoe's Vulko is the wise mentor archetype done perfectly. Patient, slightly weary, always one step ahead. These smaller roles aren't throwaways. They anchor the larger-than-life story in genuine human and Atlantean emotion. Even the smaller creative choices reward attention. The way water interacts with hair and clothing underwater, flowing, weightless, almost ethereal, was a technical nightmare to get right. But the results are mesmerizing. Arthur's long locks trail behind him like dark flames. Mera's red hair moves like liquid silk. Those details aren't just pretty. They reinforce the alien beauty of the setting. Similarly, the sound of water in every scene is never generic. It's layered, directional, alive. You hear the subtle hiss of currents, the distant roar of approaching armies, the muffled thump of footsteps on the seafloor. It's audio design that makes you feel submerged even when you're sitting on your couch. For anyone crafting a review or information video, here's a powerful final angle. Aquaman is the rare blockbuster that delivers pure, unfiltered joy without sacrificing intelligence or heart. It knows exactly what it wants to be, a grand, colorful, myth-soaked adventure, and it executes that vision with precision, passion, and zero compromise. In an age of formulaic franchises and cautious storytelling, this film feels like a bold declaration. Superheroes can still surprise us, still make us feel like kids discovering something magical for the first time. So, if you're ready for an escape that will leave you smiling, energized, and maybe even a little awestruck, do this. Clear your schedule for the next 2.5 hours, turn off the lights, turn up the volume, and press play. Let the waves crash, the music swell, the colors flood the screen. Let Arthur Curry remind you that heroes don't always come polished and perfect. Sometimes they come rough around the edges, full of doubt, and still rise to save the world. We're still fully immersed in the enchanting depths of Aquaman, the 2018 film that remains one of the most vibrant, ambitious, and purely enjoyable superhero epics ever made. We've journeyed through the visionary direction that marries high-octane spectacle with real emotional undercurrents, the powerhouse cast whose every glance and quip feels alive and authentic, the colossal production effort that flooded studios and spanned the globe to capture raw beauty and crafted fantasy, the revolutionary visual effects that turned the impossible into something breathtakingly believable, the soaring soundtrack that carries you through every emotional swell and crash, the masterful pacing that builds like an approaching storm and releases in perfect cathartic waves, the intricate costumes that weave lore into fabric and metal, the resonant themes of identity, division, and unity that give the adventure genuine soul. The clever nods to classic adventure cinema that make it feel both nostalgic and fresh. The endless rewatch value that uncovers new details with every viewing. The confident tone that never apologizes for its boldness or color. And the immersive sense of place that makes Atlantis feel like a real, ancient, fractured civilization waiting to be rediscovered. But let's keep exploring. Because a film this rich always has one more hidden current to follow. One more reason it deserves to be celebrated and rewatched again and again. One of the most rewarding aspects of Aquaman is how it turns potential weaknesses into strengths. The character was once the butt of endless jokes. He talks to fish, haha. Yet the film takes that very concept and makes it majestic. When Arthur commands sea creatures, it's not played for laughs in a dismissive way. It's treated with awe and power. Giant sharks become mounts, octopuses wield weapons with terrifying precision, whales carry warriors into battle, and even the smallest schools of fish become part of larger tactical maneuvers. The movie says, yes, he talks to fish, and it's one of the coolest abilities imaginable. By embracing what could have been campy and presenting it with total seriousness and visual grandeur, it robs the mockery of any power. That transformation alone is a masterstroke of character rehabilitation, and it's why so many people who once rolled their eyes at Aquaman now defend him fiercely. The film's handling of family dynamics adds another layer of emotional richness that often goes underappreciated. Arthur's relationship with his father Tom is tender, grounded, and beautifully understated. Two men who love each other deeply but express it in quiet, everyday ways. The flashbacks to Atlanta carry a tragic romance that feels earned and heartbreaking. Orm's resentment toward his half-brother isn't cartoon villainy. It's rooted in abandonment, duty, and a lifetime of being told he must be perfect while his sibling got to live free. These aren't just plot devices. They're the emotional engine that drives the entire story forward. When confrontations happen, they carry real weight because you understand the pain on both sides. That familial complexity gives the massive action sequences something personal to fight for, turning global stakes into something intimate and human. Let's also appreciate the sheer creativity in the set pieces. Every major action beat is designed to feel unique and memorable. The opening lighthouse defense is intimate and brutal, all tight spaces and crashing waves. The Sicily pursuit turns an ordinary European city into a vertical playground of leaps, slides, and water blasts. The trench dive is unrelenting dread, pitch black, swarming horrors, no place to hide. The desert confrontation inverts everything you expect from an underwater movie, using sand dunes like ocean swells and turning heat into a new kind of pressure. The final war is pure orchestral chaos, vast armies, colossal beasts, tridents flashing through water like lightning. Each location, each enemy type, each environmental challenge forces the heroes to adapt in different ways, keeping the action inventive instead of repetitive. That's smart blockbuster filmmaking, variety within unity. The movie also excels at visual storytelling. So much information is conveyed without words. The architecture of Atlantis tells of its rise and fall, grand halls now partially reclaimed by coral, statues worn by centuries underwater, glowing runes that hint at forgotten magic. Mira's powers aren't just flashy effects. The way water responds to her emotions, rippling gently when she's calm, surging violently when she's angry, mirrors her inner state. Arthur's gradual shift in fighting style, from land-based brawling to graceful, current-riding combat, shows his acceptance of his heritage without needing dialogue to explain it. These are the details that make a film feel alive long after you've seen it. If you're building a review or information video, consider ending with this simple invitation. Aquaman is the superhero movie that reminds us escapism doesn't have to be shallow. It can be big, bold, colorful, funny, romantic, thrilling, and surprisingly moving, all at the same time. It's a film that invites you to believe in something larger than yourself, to laugh at the absurdity of it all, to cheer for underdogs who rise, and to marvel at a world most people will never get to see. In short, it's everything a great adventure should be. We're still lost in the mesmerizing currents of Aquaman, the 2018 film that stands as one of the boldest, most visually intoxicating, and emotionally satisfying superhero adventures ever brought to the big screen. We've traveled through the masterful direction that weaves horror-tinged suspense with pure escapist wonder, the electrifying cast performances that make every character feel like a living, breathing force of nature, the monumental production journey that turned massive water tanks in Australia into roaring oceans and rugged coastlines around the world into timeless backdrops, the cutting-edge visual effects that painted entire underwater civilizations in glowing, breathing detail, the sweeping orchestral score that rises and falls with the rhythm of the sea itself, the impeccable pacing that builds anticipation like a gathering swell before crashing into exhilarating release, the richly detailed costumes that carry centuries of Atlantean history in every etched scale and flowing cape, the profound themes of fractured identity, divided worlds, and hard-won unity that give the spectacle genuine emotional gravity, the loving nods to classic adventure cinema that make the film feel both nostalgic and thrillingly new, the endless layers of rewatch value that reveal fresh secrets with every viewing, the unapologetic confidence in its bright, colorful, larger-than-life tone that refuses to shrink from its own mythology, the immersive sense of a fully realized underwater world where every kingdom pulses with distinct culture and ancient weight, the fearless rehabilitation of a once-mocked hero into a commanding, relatable icon, and the quietly powerful family dynamics that anchor even the grandest battles in something deeply human and relatable. But let's keep drifting deeper still, because a film this expansive always has more treasures waiting in the shadows, more reasons why it continues to captivate audiences, and why it remains the perfect recommendation for anyone hungry for a cinematic experience that feels truly alive. One of the most captivating elements that emerges stronger with every viewing is how Aquaman uses its massive scope to explore themes of division and reconciliation in ways that feel organic rather than forced. The surface world and the hidden kingdoms beneath the waves aren't just opposing forces in a plot. They represent two completely different ways of seeing existence, two peoples shaped by history, mistrust, and misunderstanding. The film never reduces this conflict to simple good versus evil. Instead, it shows how fear, pride, and past wounds can poison even the most noble intentions on both sides. Arthur's position as the bridge between these worlds isn't treated as an easy fix. It's a painful, complicated journey that demands sacrifice, empathy, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. Without ever preaching, the movie quietly asks us to consider what happens when we choose walls over bridges, when we let old grievances define the future. In a world that often feels more divided than ever, that message lands with surprising gentleness and power. wrapped in a package of high-flying action and dazzling visuals that make the medicine go down easy. The sheer inventiveness of the action design keeps surprising even longtime fans. Every major sequence is crafted to feel like a distinct chapter in an epic saga. The initial surface world confrontations are gritty, street-level brawls that emphasize Arthur's raw physicality and resourcefulness. He's not yet the polished king. He's a man using whatever's at hand to protect what he loves. As the story descends deeper, the fights evolve. They become more fluid, more acrobatic, more integrated with the environment. Water isn't just a setting, it's a weapon, a shield, a living ally. Characters glide, spin, surge through currents in ways that feel balletic yet brutal, thanks to meticulous motion capture work and harness choreography that let performers move naturally while VFX artists later added the impossible physics. One particularly ingenious touch is how the film uses verticality in almost every set piece. Diving into abyssal darkness, climbing towering ruins, soaring through underwater canyons, creating a sense of three-dimensional space that most action movies never achieve. It's exhilarating to watch because it constantly reinvents how superhuman combat can look and feel. The attention to small human moments amid the grandeur is what seals the emotional deal. Think of the quiet scenes at the lighthouse, waves crashing outside, a father and son sharing a beer, a simple conversation about belonging that carries the weight of years, or the fleeting glances between characters during chaos, the unspoken understanding that passes in a look when words would slow things down. These beats are brief, but perfectly placed, reminding us that even gods and kings have hearts that can break. They ground the fantasy in reality, making the triumphs feel earned and the losses sting just enough to matter. It's that balance between the intimate and the immense that turns Aquaman from a great-looking movie into something that actually moves you. And let's not overlook the pure, unfiltered sense of fun that runs through every frame. This is a film that loves being a comic book movie. It revels in the weirdness of its premise, the grandeur of its mythology, the joy of seeing impossible things happen on screen. When a character rides a giant seahorse into battle, or when an ancient guardian awakens with a roar that shakes the ocean floor, the movie doesn't undercut the moment with sarcasm. It leans into the awe. That sincerity is refreshing in an era where so many films feel obligated to mock their own conventions. Aquaman says, yes, this is ridiculous, and yes, it's magnificent, and we're going to give you both without apology. That attitude is contagious. You end up smiling, cheering, maybe even laughing out loud at how gloriously over the top it all is. If you're putting together a video about why people should watch Aquaman, lean into this idea. This isn't just another superhero origin story. It's a full-blown fantasy epic disguised as a comic book blockbuster. It's Lord of the Rings under the waves, Indiana Jones chasing lost artifacts across deserts and oceans, Star Wars with tridents instead of lightsabers. It's big in ambition, bold in vision, warm in heart, and utterly committed to giving you an escape that feels earned and exhilarating. In 2 hours and 23 minutes, it delivers more wonder, more laughs, more thrills, and more genuine feeling than many franchises manage across entire sagas. So when the moment feels right, when you need something that will lift your spirits and remind you why movies can still feel magical, reach for Aquaman. Dim the lights, let the sound envelop you, and allow yourself to be carried away to a world where heroes rise from unlikely places, where ancient powers awaken, where divided worlds find a chance at healing, and where the ocean itself becomes the greatest stage imaginable. You'll emerge on the other side feeling recharged, inspired, and probably already planning your next dive into its depths. We're still drifting through the luminous, ever-expanding world of Aquaman, the 2018 film that continues to prove itself as one of the most exuberant, visually intoxicating, and emotionally satisfying superhero experiences ever committed to celluloid. We've already charted so many of its depths, the direction that fuses kinetic action with moments of genuine tenderness, the cast whose every performance crackles with charisma and conviction, the production that turned industrial water tanks into roaring seas and distant coastlines into timeless myth, the visual effects artistry that breathed life into glowing kingdoms and primordial sea guardians, the orchestral score that surges like a living tide, the pacing that builds inexorable momentum before exploding into cathartic release, the the costume design that embeds centuries of Atlantean lore into every shimmering scale and flowing garment, the resonant themes of fractured heritage, cross-world mistrust, and hard-earned reconciliation that lend real gravity to the spectacle, the affectionate echoes of classic adventure cinema that make the film feel both comfortingly familiar and thrillingly bold, the layered rewatch value that keeps yielding new discoveries, the fearless commitment to a bright, colorful, unapologetic tone that refuses to mock its own mythology, the fully realized sense of an ancient underwater civilization fractured into distinct cultures, each pulsing with its own history and pride, the triumphant reclamation of a once-ridiculed hero into a magnetic, relatable icon, the understated family dynamics that root even the most colossal battles in intimate human longing, and the quiet but powerful exploration of division and unity that resonates far beyond the screen. Yet, the beauty of a film, this rich, is that it never truly runs out of currents to follow. So, let's keep going, because every additional angle only makes the case stronger for why Aquaman deserves to be rewatched, recommended, and celebrated without reservation. One of the most quietly brilliant aspects that reveals itself over time is how the film uses its fantastical premise to reflect very real questions about power, responsibility, and legacy without ever feeling didactic. Arthur isn't just a man discovering he can talk to fish or wield a magic trident. He's someone grappling with what it means to inherit a throne he never asked for, to rule a people who have every reason to despise his very existence, to reconcile two halves of an identity that have been at war for generations. The movie never spells out these dilemmas in speeches. Instead, it shows them through action and silence, through the way Arthur hesitates before a crown, through the flicker of doubt in his eyes when he first sees the full scope of Atlantis, through the slow realization that true leadership isn't about domination, but about healing old wounds. That subtlety allows the grand fantasy to carry profound emotional truth. Power isn't a gift you simply accept. It's a burden you must learn to carry. And sometimes carrying it means choosing forgiveness over vengeance, connection over isolation. In a genre often dominated by chosen one narratives that feel rote, Aquaman refreshes the archetype by making the journey feel earned, painful, and ultimately hopeful. The creature work deserves its own extended applause because it goes far beyond generic sea monsters. Every animal, every mythical beast, feels like it belongs to this specific world and has its own evolutionary logic. The Carathen isn't just a big, scary thing. It's an ancient sentinel whose size and age convey millennia of guardianship, whose voice, that unmistakable Julie Andrews timbre, carries wisdom as much as menace. The trench dwellers move with the jerky, alien desperation of deep-sea life that has adapted to eternal darkness and crushing pressure, their translucent bodies and needle-lined jaws making them terrifying yet strangely pitiable. Even the good creatures, the massive whale transports, the crab armies, the seahorse mounts, are rendered with anatomical care and behavioral authenticity, so they never feel like cartoon props. They react to their environment, to light, to sound, to each other, creating the illusion of a complete breathing ecosystem. That level of detail turns background elements into active participants in the story, making the underwater realm feel populated rather than empty, alive rather than decorative. Another strength that keeps surfacing is the film's refusal to let romance overshadow the rest of the narrative while still making it genuinely compelling. Arthur and Mara's relationship isn't the typical insta-love arc so common in blockbusters. It begins with friction. She sees him as a spoiled surface dweller unworthy of his birthright. He sees her as an uptight royal who doesn't understand his world. Their attraction grows through necessity and shared peril, through moments when each sees the other's strength and vulnerability, through banter that sharpens into respect and then deepens into something tender. The movie lets them be equals, partners in battle, in purpose, in growth, without diminishing either character. When affection finally surfaces, it feels like a natural culmination rather than a forced requirement of the genre. That restraint and authenticity make their connection one of the more believable romances in modern superhero cinema, adding warmth and stakes to every joint sequence without ever stealing focus from the larger quest. The soundscape, when you really listen, is a character in its own right. Beyond the score, the mix layers thousands of subtle details: the distant groan of shifting tectonic plates during kingdom-wide conflicts, the soft hiss of water parting around speeding vehicles, the metallic ring of tridents clashing underwater with that peculiar slowed-down resonance, the eerie, almost choral hum of bioluminescent life in the background of quieter scenes. These elements create an auditory depth that matches the visual one. You feel the pressure, the vastness, the movement of the ocean even when the picture is still. It's the kind of sound design that rewards headphones or a good home theater setup, turning passive viewing into a full-body experience where you can almost taste the salt and feel the current against your skin. If you're scripting a video about why Aquaman still matters, consider closing with this thought. In an era when many blockbusters chase spectacle at the expense of soul or irony at the expense of sincerity, Aquaman dares to be both enormous and earnest. It invites you to marvel without embarrassment, to cheer without cynicism, to feel wonder without apology. It reminds us that movies can still transport us to places we've never been, introduce us to heroes we never knew we needed, and leave us better for the journey. It's not just entertainment, it's a declaration that imagination, when given unlimited resources and zero shame, can still create something transcendent. So the next time you have a couple of free hours and a craving for something that will lift you up, make you laugh, make you gasp, and maybe even make you think a little deeper about where you belong in the world, reach for Aquaman. Let the screen fill with crashing surf. Let the music pull you under. Let the colors and chaos and heart of it all carry you away. When the final notes fade and the screen goes dark, you'll feel that rare, perfect combination of exhilaration and contentment that only the very best adventures can deliver. We're still fully submerged in the radiant, endlessly fascinating depths of Aquaman, the 2018 film that somehow manages to feel both like a throwback to the grandest adventure epics and a forward-leaping statement on what modern blockbusters can achieve when they trust their own mythology without hesitation. We've already explored so many of its shimmering layers, the direction that dances effortlessly between pulse-pounding spectacle and moments of quiet human vulnerability, the cast whose chemistry ignites every frame and makes even the most fantastical exchanges feel grounded and real, the production odyssey that transformed cavernous water tanks into living seas and scattered global locations into portals to myth, the visual effects wizardry that conjured glowing underwater metropolises and primordial guardians with such photorealistic conviction that you forget you're watching CGI at all, the majestic score that rises like a tidal surge and recedes like an ebbing wave, carrying every emotional beat along with it, the meticulously calibrated pacing that lets tension coil slowly before unleashing in glorious, cathartic bursts, the costume design that turns every garment into a chapter of Atlantean history told through texture, color, and movement, the profound yet never heavy-handed themes of split identity, inherited conflict, and the fragile hope of reconciliation that give the towering action genuine emotional stakes, the loving homages to classic swashbucklers and fantasy sagas that make the film feel timeless rather than trendy, the astonishing rewatchability that keeps unveiling new details and nuances with every pass, the unshakable confidence in a vivid, colorful, proudly larger-than-life tone that refuses to hide behind irony or self-mockery, the meticulously crafted sense of a vast, ancient underwater civilization divided into kingdoms each with its own distinct culture, pride, architecture, and worldview, the triumphant reimagining of a character once reduced to punchlines into a charismatic, flawed, deeply compelling hero audiences can root for without reservation, the understated but powerfully felt family bonds that anchor even the most cataclysmic battles in something intimate and achingly recognizable, the subtle but resonant exploration of division versus unity that mirrors real-world fractures without ever preaching, the inventive creature design that makes every sea beast feel like a natural extension of a living, breathing ocean ecosystem rather than a special effects gimmick, the carefully nurtured romance that grows from friction and mutual challenge into something equal, respectful, and genuinely moving, and the immersive, multi-layered soundscape that wraps around you like actual water, full of subtle hisses, distant rumbles, metallic clashes slowed by depth, and the ever-present pulse of the sea. Yet even after all that, there's still more beauty waiting to be surfaced, because a film as generous and expansive as Aquaman never truly exhausts its secrets or its capacity to surprise and delight. One of the most enchanting qualities that becomes clearer the longer you spend with the movie is how perfectly it balances spectacle with sincerity. It understands that true awe doesn't come from size alone. It comes from contrast. The film gives you the colossal, armies numbering in the tens of thousands clashing across vast abyssal plains, entire kingdoms rising like golden mountains from the seafloor, ancient guardians awakening with roars that shake the water itself. But it never lets those moments exist in isolation. It always returns you to the small, the flicker of uncertainty in Arthur's eyes when he first grips the trident, the way Mira's hand instinctively reaches for his in the chaos of battle, the quiet pride in Tom Curry's voice when he talks about the son he raised alone, the momentary softening in Orm's expression when old memories surface. These tiny human anchors keep the epic from drifting into emptiness. They remind us that even in a story about warring underwater empires and mythical weapons, what ultimately matters most are the connections between people, how they hurt each other, how they protect each other, how they find their way back to each other. That emotional tether is what turns Aquaman from a dazzling visual feast into something that lingers in your chest long after the screen fades to black. The movie also excels at creating a sense of discovery that feels personal rather than passive. When the camera first plunges beneath the waves and reveals Atlantis in its full golden splendor, spires soaring into blue infinity, schools of bioluminescent fish weaving through archways like living light, massive statues half reclaimed by coral telling silent stories of forgotten kings, the effect is breathtaking, but it's also intimate. You don't just watch someone else discover this world, you feel like you're discovering it alongside Arthur. The film is careful to let us share his awe, his confusion, his growing sense of belonging. Every new kingdom we visit feels like a fresh revelation because the movie takes its time to let the camera linger, to let the light play across surfaces, to let the music swell just enough to make your pulse quicken. It's the cinematic equivalent of holding your breath while exploring a hidden cave system, only to emerge into a chamber of impossible beauty. That shared sense of wonder is rare and precious, and it's one of the main reasons people keep coming back to Aquaman years later. They want to feel that rush of discovery again. Even the humor lands in a way that feels earned and character-specific rather than manufactured for cheap laughs. Arthur's sarcasm isn't generic quipping, it's the defense mechanism of a man who spent his life feeling like he doesn't quite fit anywhere. Mira's dry retorts come from a lifetime of royal duty that has left little room for frivolity. Their exchanges spark because they're rooted in real personality clashes, real cultural differences, real vulnerability hidden behind bravado. When the movie lets them tease each other in the middle of chaos, whether it's dodging energy blasts or swimming through a feeding frenzy, it never feels like the tone is undercutting the stakes. Instead, it feels like proof that even in the darkest, most overwhelming moments, people still find ways to connect, to lighten the load, to remind each other they're not alone. That kind of humor strengthens the emotional core rather than diluting it, and it's part of what makes the film so rewatchably warm. So if you're still deciding whether to dive in, or whether to dive in again, let me leave you with this. Aquaman is the superhero movie that remembers the child inside every adult who once dreamed of secret worlds beneath the waves, of hidden powers waiting to be claimed, of heroes who don't have to be perfect to be extraordinary. It invites you to believe without embarrassment, to feel without cynicism, to marvel without apology. It delivers 2 hours and 23 minutes of pure, unfiltered cinematic joy. Joy that comes from color, from scale, from heart, from imagination unleashed and unafraid. When the time feels right, settle in, hit play, and let the ocean claim you. Let the opening roar of surf fill your speakers. Let the music rise like a current pulling you down. Let the glowing kingdoms and thundering battles and quiet moments of connection wash over you in waves. When it's over, you'll carry that feeling with you, the feeling of having visited somewhere impossible and come back just a little more alive. We're still drifting weightlessly through the luminous, ever-shifting beauty of Aquaman, the 2018 film that somehow keeps revealing new facets of brilliance, no matter how many times you return to its depths. We've already charted so many of its glowing wonders, the direction that weaves thunderous action with moments of piercing intimacy, the cast whose every glance, smirk, and roar feels charged with lived-in authenticity, the production saga that turned cavernous Australian water tanks into raging oceans and far-flung real-world coastlines into timeless thresholds between worlds. The visual effects alchemy that conjured entire glowing civilizations and ancient sea titans with such convincing presence that you forget the boundary between practical and digital. The orchestral score that breathes and swells in perfect sync with every emotional tide. The pacing that coils tension like deep-sea pressure before exploding into exhilarating release. The costume craftsmanship that embeds Atlantean history, pride, and power into every etched scale and flowing fabric. The quietly powerful themes of divided heritage, inherited mistrust, and the fragile possibility of unity that give the towering spectacle genuine emotional weight. The affectionate echoes of classic adventure serials and fantasy epics that make the film feel both comfortingly familiar and thrillingly bold. The astonishing rewatchability that keeps uncovering fresh details and emotional nuances with every viewing. The unapologetic confidence in a vivid, saturated, proudly larger-than-life tone that refuses to shrink behind cynicism or self-deprecation. The meticulously realized sense of a vast underwater realm fractured into kingdoms, each pulsing with its own distinct culture, architecture, rituals, and worldview. The triumphant reimagining of a once-ridiculed hero into a charismatic, flawed, deeply compelling figure audiences can champion without hesitation. The understated yet profoundly felt family bonds that root even the most apocalyptic battles in something achingly human. The subtle but resonant meditation on division versus reconciliation that mirrors real-world fractures without ever lecturing. The inventive creature design that makes every mythical beast feel like an organic extension of a living, breathing ocean ecosystem. The carefully cultivated romance that grows from friction and mutual respect into something equal, authentic, and quietly moving. The immersive, multi-layered sound design that envelops you like actual water with distant rumbles, slowed metallic clashes, and the constant subtle pulse of currents, and the masterful balance of colossal scale with intimate human moments that keeps the epic from ever feeling hollow. Yet, even after all these layers have been peeled back, there's still more light filtering down through the water, because a film as generous, as confident, and as alive as Aquaman never truly runs dry of reasons to celebrate it, to recommend it, to return to it again and again. One of the most quietly profound strengths that keeps surfacing is how the movie turns the act of belonging into its central emotional engine without ever making it feel like a cliché. Arthur Curry isn't simply finding his place. He's navigating the excruciating reality of being wanted by neither side of his bloodline at first, of carrying the weight of two worlds that have spent centuries teaching themselves to hate each other, of realizing that the throne he never sought might be the only thing that can prevent mutual destruction. The film never rushes that journey. It lets Arthur wrestle with doubt in private moments at the lighthouse, and lets him feel the sting of rejection in the halls of Atlantis, lets him grapple with the moral cost of power when he finally holds the Trident. Every step forward is hard-won, every moment of growth earned through pain, through failure, through the slow building of trust with people who have every reason to see him as an outsider. That patience makes his eventual rise feel monumental, not because of the crown or the armies or the glowing weapon, but because of what it cost him personally to claim it. In a genre full of chosen one stories that often feel preordained, Aquaman gives us a hero who has to choose himself over and over until the choice becomes unbreakable. That arc lands with surprising emotional force amid all the spectacle, and it's one of the main reasons the film stays with you long after the final battle fades. The visual language of the movie is another element that rewards endless revisiting. Every frame is composed with intention. Wide shots of Atlantis aren't just pretty. They're designed to convey scale and isolation at the same time. Golden spires stretching into hazy blue distances, tiny figures dwarfed by architecture that speaks of millennia of pride and hubris. Close-ups linger on faces during chaos, capturing micro-expressions that words could never convey. The flicker of grief behind Orm's rage, the quiet resolve hardening in Mara's eyes, the dawning wonder in Arthur's when he first sees the full scope of what he's inherited. Color is used as emotion. The cold, desaturated blues of the trench mirror, its hopelessness. The warm, golden hues of central Atlantis signal heritage and possibility. The vivid reds and blacks of Zeeble carry menace and regality. Even the lighting tells stories. shafts of surface sunlight piercing the water like hope breaking through despair, bioluminescent glows that turn darkness into something almost sacred. This is cinematography that doesn't just look good. It speaks, it breathes, it carries meaning in every hue and shadow. The film's sense of playfulness never undermines its stakes. It enhances them. When a character casually mentions riding a giant seahorse into battle, or when an octopus warrior wields a sword with surprising dexterity, the movie doesn't flinch or apologize. It presents these things with the same earnest grandeur as the most serious dramatic beats. That tonal consistency is rare and powerful. It allows the audience to accept the wildest elements of the premise without mental gymnastics. You don't have to choose between laughing at the absurdity and caring about the outcome. The film lets you do both simultaneously. That permission to embrace the ridiculous and the sublime at the same time is part of what makes Aquaman feel so liberating, so joyful, so refreshingly unafraid of its own imagination. If you're putting together a video about why this film still commands attention years later, lean into this simple truth. Aquaman is the superhero movie that remembers the child who once stared at the ocean and wondered what secrets it held. It honors that curiosity, that sense of boundless possibility, that belief that there are still places on this planet, or beneath it, where magic might wait. It delivers spectacle without sacrificing heart, humor without sacrificing stakes, wonder without sacrificing intelligence. In 2 hours and 23 minutes, it gives you an escape that feels earned, an adventure that feels personal, and a reminder that sometimes the deepest stories are the ones that make us feel most alive. So when the moment arrives, when you need something that will lift you, make you laugh, make you cheer, and maybe even make you look at the sea a little differently the next time you stand on a beach, reach for Aquaman. Let the screen flood with crashing surf and glowing depths. Let the music pull you under like a riptide. Let the colors and chaos and quiet moments of connection carry you through. When the credits roll, you'll carry that feeling with you. A small, bright spark of wonder that the ocean never really gives up, even on dry land. We're still floating weightlessly through the radiant, ever-unfolding majesty of Aquaman, the 2018 film that keeps proving, year after year, that it belongs among the very best examples of what a modern blockbuster can achieve when it dares to be unapologetically ambitious, visually breathtaking, emotionally honest, and joyfully committed to its own mythology. We've already mapped so many of its luminous depths, the direction that balances roaring spectacle with piercing moments of human vulnerability, the cast whose every performance pulses with lived-in charisma and layered conviction, the production epic that flooded sound stages with millions of gallons of water and chased authentic beauty across rugged coastlines and exotic deserts, the visual effects mastery that conjured glowing underwater empires and ancient sea sentinels with such lifelike presence that the boundary between reality and imagination simply dissolves, the orchestral score that breathes in perfect harmony with every emotional current, the pacing that coils anticipation like deep ocean pressure before releasing in glorious, heart-pounding waves, the costume artistry that turns every garment into a silent history of Atlantean pride, power, and evolution, the quietly profound themes of fractured identity, inherited enmity, and the slow, painful path toward reconciliation that give the colossal action genuine emotional gravity, the affectionate nods to classic swashbucklers and mythic sagas that make the film feel both nostalgic and daringly fresh, the astonishing rewatchability that continues to reveal hidden emotional beats and visual subtleties with every return visit, the fearless embrace of a saturated, colorful, proudly extravagant tone that refuses to hide behind irony or self-consciousness, the meticulously constructed sense of a vast, ancient underwater realm divided into kingdoms each alive with its own distinct culture, rituals, architecture, and worldview, the triumphant reimagining of a once-mocked hero into a flawed, magnetic, deeply relatable champion, the understated yet powerfully resonant family dynamics that anchor even the most apocalyptic battles in something intimate and achingly human, the subtle but moving meditation on division versus unity that echoes real-world fractures without ever preaching, the inventive creature design that makes every mythical beast feel like a natural, breathing part of an interconnected ocean ecosystem, the carefully nurtured romance that evolves from friction and mutual respect into something equal, authentic, and quietly stirring. The immersive, multi-layered sound design that wraps around you like actual water with distant tectonic groans, slowed metallic clashes, and the constant subtle heartbeat of currents, and the masterful interplay of overwhelming scale with small, human moments that keeps the epic from ever drifting into emptiness. Yet even after all these layers have been illuminated, there's still more light streaming down from above. Because a film as generous, as confident, and as alive as Aquaman never truly exhausts its capacity to surprise, to delight, to move us. One of the most quietly magnificent things about Aquaman is how it turns the very concept of legacy into something visceral and urgent, rather than abstract or ceremonial. Arthur isn't merely inheriting a throne, he's inheriting centuries of unresolved pain, centuries of decisions made by people long gone that still echo in the lives of those alive today, centuries of choices that have shaped entire cultures and hardened borders between worlds. The film never lets him, or us, forget that legacy isn't a crown you simply put on. It's a weight you carry, a chain of cause and effect that stretches backward and forward through time. Every step Arthur takes toward accepting his birthright is shadowed by the ghosts of those who came before. Atlanta's sacrifice, Orm's bitterness, the ancient kings whose failures and triumphs are carved into the very stone of Atlantis. That historical weight gives the story a sense of depth that most blockbusters never reach. When Arthur finally stands before the Trident, it's not just a weapon he's claiming, it's the accumulated responsibility of an entire civilization, the chance to break cycles of hatred, the opportunity to prove that heritage doesn't have to be a prison but can be a bridge. That sense of history breathing beneath every scene makes the climax feel earned in a way that goes far beyond visual grandeur. It feels like the resolution of something ancient and necessary. The movie's use of environment as character is another element that keeps revealing new richness. The ocean isn't merely a setting, it's an active participant with moods, secrets, and agency of its own. The trench's suffocating dread made tangible. The open waters around Atlantis are regal and welcoming, yet laced with hidden currents of danger. The desert beneath the sea is a surreal inversion that turns everything familiar upside down. Every location has its own personality, its own rules, its own way of testing the characters. When Arthur and Mera move through these spaces, the environment reacts. Currents push back, shadows conceal threats, light reveals truths. This dynamic relationship between hero and world makes the journey feel alive and unpredictable rather than linear. The film understands that great adventures aren't just about what happens to the characters. They're about how the world itself responds to them, challenges them, changes them. That interplay creates a sense of immersion that lingers long after the credits roll. You start noticing how light behaves differently underwater in real life, how sound carries in open spaces, how pressure shifts with depth. Even the smaller visual flourishes add up to something extraordinary. The way bioluminescent markings pulse gently across armor during quiet moments, the faint trails of bubbles that follow every swift movement, the way water distorts light around a trident strike so it looks like lightning underwater. These details aren't just pretty, they're proof of obsessive care. They build a cumulative effect where the world feels fully realized, not half-sketched. You believe in Atlantis not because it's explained in exposition, but because every frame is saturated with evidence that this place has existed for millennia, that people have lived here, fought here, loved here, died here. That level of world-building turns passive viewing into active exploration. You find yourself scanning the background, noticing new carvings on a wall, spotting another species of fish darting through a scene, feeling like you're discovering secrets alongside the characters. If you're preparing a video about why Aquaman remains essential viewing, center it around this idea. This is the superhero movie that dares to be joyful without being shallow, grand without being hollow, sincere without being sentimental. It invites you to marvel at the impossible, to laugh at the absurdity, to feel the weight of legacy, to root for a hero who has to earn his heroism the hard way. It delivers an escape that feels honest, an adventure that feels personal, a reminder that cinema can still take us somewhere we've never been and leave us better for having gone there. So when the urge strikes, when you need something that will recharge your sense of wonder, make you laugh out loud, make your pulse race, and maybe even make you think a little more deeply about where you fit in the world. Reach for Aquaman. Let the screen fill with roaring surf and glowing depths. Let the music pull you under like an irresistible current. Let the colors and chaos and quiet moments of connection sweep you away. When it's over, you'll carry that spark with you. A small, bright reminder that wonder is never far away, that heroes can rise from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the deepest stories are the ones that make us feel most gloriously, unapologetically alive. We're still gliding effortlessly through the shimmering, infinite expanse of Aquaman, the 2018 film that keeps proving itself as one of the most exuberant, visually overwhelming, and emotionally satisfying superhero adventures ever crafted. A movie that somehow manages to feel both like a loving tribute to the wildest comic book dreams and a bold declaration that blockbusters can still surprise us with sheer, unfiltered joy. We've already explored so many of its radiant layers, the direction that masterfully blends heart-racing spectacle with moments of raw, unguarded vulnerability, the cast whose performances burn with such natural charisma and depth that every interaction feels lived in and electric, the production marathon that flooded Australian sound stages with millions of gallons of water and chased authentic majesty across rugged coastlines, sun-baked deserts, and Mediterranean cliffs, the visual effects sorcery that conjured entire underwater metropolises glowing with bioluminescent life and colossal sea guardians that move with terrifying ancient grace, the sweeping orchestral score that rises like a gathering storm and ebbs like a retreating tide, carrying every emotional current along with it, the pacing that builds slow, inexorable tension before unleashing in glorious, pulse-pounding waves of action, the costume design that turns every piece of armor, every flowing garment, every etched scale into a silent testament to Atlantean history, culture, and power, the quietly profound themes of split heritage, inherited resentment, and the slow, courageous path toward unity that give the towering spectacle genuine emotional weight, the affectionate echoes of classic adventure cinema that make the film feel both comfortingly familiar and thrillingly new, the astonishing rewatchability that keeps yielding fresh details, subtle character beats, and visual flourishes with every return visit, the fearless commitment to a bright, saturated, proudly extravagant tone that refuses to retreat behind irony or self-mockery, the meticulously constructed sense of a vast, ancient underwater civilization fractured into kingdoms each alive with its own distinct architecture, rituals, pride, and worldview, the triumphant reimagining of a character once reduced to easy punchlines into a flawed, magnetic, deeply compelling hero. Audiences can root for without hesitation the understated yet powerfully resonant family dynamics that root even the most apocalyptic battles in something intimate and achingly human, the subtle but moving meditation on division versus reconciliation that mirrors real-world fractures without ever preaching, the inventive creature design that makes every mythical beast feel like a natural, breathing extension of an interconnected ocean ecosystem, the carefully nurtured romance that evolves from friction and mutual challenge into something equal, authentic, and quietly stirring, the immersive, multi-layered sound design that envelops you like actual water with distant tectonic groans, slowed metallic clashes, and the constant subtle heartbeat of currents, and the masterful interplay of overwhelming scale with small, human moments that keeps the epic from ever drifting into emptiness. Yet even after all these treasures have been brought into the light, there's still more wonder waiting to be surfaced. Because a film as generous, as confident, and as endlessly alive as Aquaman never truly runs out of reasons to celebrate it, to recommend it, to dive back in and let it pull you under all over again. One of the most captivating qualities that keeps revealing itself is how the film turns the ocean itself into a living metaphor for the story's heart. Water is never just a backdrop. It's a force that shapes everything it touches, a mirror that reflects both beauty and terror, a barrier that separates worlds, and a bridge that connects them. The surface is bright, open, familiar, yet shallow in its understanding. The depths are mysterious, ancient, full of hidden power and hidden pain. Arthur moves between these realms not just physically but emotionally, learning that strength isn't about conquering one world over the other, but about carrying elements of both inside you, letting them coexist rather than fight. The movie never spells this out in heavy-handed dialogue. It shows it through the way water flows around Arthur as he grows more comfortable in his heritage, the way currents push him forward when he finally embraces his destiny, the way stillness descends when he confronts the deepest truths about himself and his family. That poetic use of environment elevates the entire narrative. Every dive feels like a step deeper into self-discovery, every surfacing like a return with new perspective. It's filmmaking that trusts the audience to feel the symbolism rather than be told it, and that trust makes the experience so much more powerful and personal. The action sequences themselves are another endless source of delight because they refuse to repeat themselves stylistically. Each major set piece is a completely different flavor of excitement. The early confrontations on land are gritty, close-quarters brawls that emphasize raw physicality and improvised chaos. The Sicily chase explodes into vertical, high-speed acrobatics where rooftops become launch pads and water becomes a weapon that twists through the air like living silk. The trench descent plunges into pure survival horror, claustrophobic darkness, swarming horrors, the constant sense of being hunted in a place where light barely reaches. The Sahara sequence inverts everything you expect from an underwater movie, turning sand into a suffocating, shifting ocean of its own, heat into pressure, scorpions into predators that move with predatory grace. Then, the climactic Kingdom War becomes something almost operatic. Vast armies clashing across miles of open water, massive mounts charging through currents, tridents flashing like lightning in slow-motion sprays of bubbles and light. Every location demands a different fighting style, every enemy type forces adaptation, every environment changes the rules of engagement. That variety keeps the adrenaline fresh, prevents fatigue, and makes each sequence feel like a new chapter in an epic saga rather than a repetition of the same formula. The film's sense of legacy also extends to its place in the larger superhero landscape. It arrived at a moment when many were questioning whether the genre had grown too grim, too self-serious, too obsessed with interconnected universes at the expense of standalone stories. Aquaman answered that doubt with a resounding, colorful roar. Yes, superheroes can still be fun, can still embrace wonder, can still deliver pure spectacle without sacrificing character or heart. It proved that embracing the inherent weirdness of comic book mythology, talking to fish, riding sharks, wielding a magic trident, doesn't make a story lesser, it can make it greater when handled with conviction and visual imagination. That confidence rippled outward, influencing later films to take bigger tonal risks, to lean into color and joy rather than defaulting to shadow and grit. Even now, years later, it stands as a high watermark for what a solo superhero movie can achieve when it trusts its own voice and refuses to apologize for being exactly what it wants to be. If you're scripting a video to convince people why they absolutely need to experience Aquaman, let this be your closing heartbeat. This isn't just another entry in a franchise. It's a standalone epic that delivers everything you could want from a big screen adventure. It gives you jaw-dropping visuals that demand the biggest screen you can find, laugh-out-loud humor that feels natural and character-driven, heart-pounding action that never repeats itself, a romance that grows organically and respectfully, family drama that hits quietly but deeply, themes that linger without preaching, and above all, a sense of pure, unfiltered wonder that reminds you why you fell in love with movies in the first place. It's the kind of film that leaves you energized, smiling, maybe even a little awestruck, ready to tell everyone you know that they have to see this. So when the moment feels right, when you need an escape that will recharge your imagination, lift your spirits, make your heart race, and leave you feeling more alive, reach for Aquaman. Dim the lights, crank the volume, let the opening crash of waves fill the room, let the music pull you under like an irresistible current, let the glowing kingdoms and thundering battles and quiet moments of connection sweep over you in wave after wave of pure cinematic magic. When the final notes fade and the screen goes dark, you'll carry that feeling with you, a bright, buoyant spark that says the world still has room for wonder, that heroes can rise from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the deepest adventures are the ones that make us feel most gloriously, unapologetically alive. We're still lost in the luminous, ever-deepening beauty of Aquaman, the 2018 film that keeps proving itself as one of the most vibrant, ambitious, and purely joyful superhero epics ever made. A movie that somehow manages to feel both like a nostalgic love letter to the wildest days of comic book adventure and a confident step forward into what big-screen spectacle can still achieve when it refuses to play it safe. We've already surfaced so many of its glowing treasures, the direction that dances between thunderous action and moments of raw, unguarded heart, the cast whose performances crackle with such natural charisma and layered truth that every line and glance feels alive, the production journey that turned massive water tanks into roaring seas and scattered global locations into timeless thresholds between worlds, the visual effects artistry that painted glowing underwater kingdoms and ancient sea titans with such photorealistic conviction that you forget you're watching anything but reality, the majestic score that surges and ebbs in perfect harmony with every emotional tide, the pacing that builds slow, irresistible pressure before exploding in cathartic, heart-pounding release, the costume design that turns every piece of armor and flowing fabric into a chapter of Atlantean history, told through texture and light, the quietly resonant themes of divided heritage, inherited pain, and the fragile hope of reconciliation that give the towering spectacle genuine emotional weight, the affectionate nods to classic adventure cinema that make the film feel both comfortingly familiar and thrillingly bold, the astonishing rewatchability that keeps unveiling new details, subtle character beats, and visual poetry with every return visit, the fearless embrace of a bright, colorful, proudly extravagant tone that refuses to hide behind cynicism or self-deprecation, the meticulously realized sense of a vast underwater realm fractured into kingdoms, each pulsing with its own distinct culture, pride, architecture, and worldview, the triumphant reimagining of a once ridiculed hero into a charismatic, flawed, deeply relatable champion, the understated yet powerfully felt family bonds that anchor even the most apocalyptic battles in something intimate and achingly human, the subtle but moving meditation on division versus unity that echoes real-world fractures without ever lecturing, the inventive creature design that makes every mythical beast feel like a natural, breathing part of an interconnected ocean ecosystem, the carefully cultivated romance that grows from friction and mutual respect into something equal, authentic, and quietly stirring, the immersive, multi-layered soundscape that wraps around you like actual water with distant groans, slowed clashes, and the constant subtle pulse of currents, and the masterful balance of overwhelming scale with small, human moments that keeps the epic from ever feeling hollow. Yet even after all these layers have been illuminated, there's still more light filtering down through the water, because a film as generous, as confident, and as endlessly alive as Aquaman never truly runs out of reasons to celebrate it, to recommend it, to dive back in and let it pull you under all over again. One of the most quietly powerful things that keeps revealing itself is how the film turns the very concept of home into something fluid, contested, and ultimately expansive. Arthur Curry doesn't simply discover where he belongs. He has to redefine what home even means when your blood ties you to two worlds that have spent centuries teaching themselves to fear and despise each other. The lighthouse on the surface isn't just a childhood house. It's a fragile sanctuary built on love and loss, a place where the ocean is always audible even when it's out of sight. Atlantis isn't just a kingdom. It's a monument to pride and isolation, a glittering cage of tradition that has forgotten how to breathe freely. The movie never lets Arthur choose one over the other in some simplistic way. Instead, it lets him carry pieces of both inside him, lets him forge a new definition of belonging that includes the crash of waves on rock and the glow of bioluminescent halls, the smell of salt air, and the pressure of deep water. That redefinition feels earned because it's painful. Every step toward acceptance is shadowed by rejection. Every moment of connection is tested by old wounds. When Arthur finally stands as a bridge rather than a battleground, it's not a coronation. It's a quiet revolution in what family, heritage, and home can mean when they're allowed to evolve rather than remain frozen in ancient grudges. That emotional arc gives the film a depth that lingers long after the visual fireworks fade, turning what could have been a simple hero's journey into something that feels personal and universal at the same time. The movie's command of tone is another element that keeps surprising even longtime fans. It understands that true wonder requires trust. Trust that the audience will go along for the ride without needing constant winks or apologies. When a character rides a giant seahorse into battle, or when an octopus warrior wields a sword with surprising grace, or when a colossal ancient guardian awakens with a roar that shakes the ocean floor. The film presents these things with the same earnest grandeur as the most serious dramatic beats. It never flinches from the inherent strangeness of its premise. Instead, it leans all the way in, trusting that if the visuals are stunning enough, the emotions real enough, the stakes high enough, the audience will meet it halfway. That tonal courage is rare in modern blockbusters, where so many films hedge their bets with irony or self-awareness. Aquaman refuses to hedge. It says, "This is ridiculous. This is magnificent. This is both at once, and we're going to give you all of it without compromise." That permission to embrace the absurd and the sublime simultaneously is part of what makes the film feel so liberating, so joyful, so refreshingly unafraid of its own imagination. The visual poetry of the quieter moments also deserves endless praise. When Arthur stands alone on a rocky outcrop watching the sunset over the ocean, or when Mera gazes into the glowing depths with a mixture of longing and determination, or when Tom Curry looks out at the waves knowing his son is somewhere beneath them, these scenes are composed with such delicate restraint that they hit harder than any explosion. The camera lingers just long enough to let silence do its work, letting natural light play across faces, letting the sound of distant surf or the soft gurgle of water fill the frame. These beats aren't filler. They're the emotional anchors that make the spectacle matter. They remind us that even in a story about warring empires and mythical weapons, what ultimately resonates are the small human truths. A father's pride, a lover's fear, a brother's grief, a man's quiet decision to become more than what he was born to be. That balance between the intimate and the immense is what turns Aquaman from a great-looking movie into something that actually moves you. If you're putting together a video to share why Aquaman still deserves every bit of love and attention, center it around this simple invitation. This is the superhero film that remembers the child inside you who once stared at the sea and wondered what secrets it held. It honors that curiosity, that sense of boundless possibility, that belief that there are still places, on this planet or beneath it, where magic might wait. It delivers spectacle without sacrificing heart, humor without sacrificing stakes, wonder without sacrificing intelligence. In 2 hours and 23 minutes, it gives you an escape that feels honest, an adventure that feels personal, a reminder that cinema can still transport us somewhere we've never been and leave us better for having gone there. So when the time feels right, when you need something that will recharge your sense of wonder, make you laugh out loud, make your pulse race, and maybe even make you look at the ocean a little differently the next time you stand on a shore, reach for Aquaman. Dim the lights, crank the volume, let the opening roar of surf fill the room. Let the music pull you under like an irresistible current. Let the glowing kingdoms and thundering battles and quiet moments of connection wash over you in wave after wave of pure cinematic magic. When the credits roll and the screen fades to black, you'll carry that spark with you, a small, bright reminder that wonder is never far away, that heroes can rise from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the deepest stories are the ones that make us feel most gloriously, unapologetically alive.